The Alpha Superstar's Dirty Secret. A Werewolf Shifter Romance Audiobook. Written by Rain Hart. Chapter 1. The Growl Behind the Screen. The scent of perfume, cheap champagne, and desperation clung to the velvet-draped corridors of the Veldenridge International Film Festival like smoke. Elena Marlowe adjusted the lanyard she'd printed at a local Kinko's and pulled her black baseball cap lower over her brow. Her press badge read Emily Marr, London Cenobite, a passable enough alias if no one looked too closely. She slipped through the narrow hallway past the flashing lights and screaming fans, where security began to thin and the real conversations happened, the whispers, the meltdowns, the off-camera truths. That's what she was after. The real story. Her boots barely made a sound as she ducked past a security guard distracted by his phone. Another turn, another marble-columned arch, and then… boom! A low, guttural thud echoed through the corridor ahead. Elena froze, shoulders tense. The sound wasn't loud, but it wasn't normal either. Not for a film festival. Not for any human, really. She followed it. The door ahead was slightly ajar. No label. Probably VIP. Probably off-limits. Perfect. She pressed a hand against the wood, easing it open just enough to peer inside. The room was dimly lit, the lights deliberately low and moody. On the floor, beneath a shredded stack of contract pages and the wreckage of an overturned glass pitcher, stood a man. Not just any man. Adrian Vale. He was taller than she'd expected. Lean but solid, wearing a tailored black suit that hugged his frame like second skin. His back was to her, fists clenched at his sides, shoulders rising and falling with heavy, barely contained breaths. The air around him shimmered with tension, like a string drawn taut past breaking. Then he growled. Not a huff. Not a sigh. A growl. Low, raw, and animal. Elena's heart skipped, then kicked against her ribs like it had something to prove. Her hand, trembling, reached for the mini recorder in her pocket. She pressed it between her fingers, lifting it silently. Adrian turned. His eyes met hers. The room didn't move. She did. Or maybe it was her blood, her balance, her breath. Her vision narrowed, tunneled to the space between them. Adrian's eyes, strange, brilliant, not quite brown. Flecks of gold caught in a storm of gray. They flickered, as if backlit by something inside him. His jaw tightened. His fingers twitched, curled slightly, almost like claws. He didn't speak. She couldn't. And then the scent hit her. Not cologne. Not sweat or whiskey or studio vanity. No, this was something else. Snow-drenched pine. Rusted iron. Burned lavender. It shouldn't have smelled like him. It shouldn't have smelled like home. Elena's fingers faltered around the recorder. The air in her lungs turned to mist. For one long, dangerous moment, she forgot what she was doing there. Then the door slammed behind her. A man stepped in between them, slick suit, greased hair, and an expression like cold steel just before it cut skin. "Give me the recorder," he said. His voice was flat. Lethal. Elena blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're excused," he replied, holding out one gloved hand. "Recorder. Now." She hesitated only a second before reaching into her coat and handing it over. His fingers were ice. He didn't look at it. He looked at her. "You just made a very serious mistake," he said softly. "What you heard in this room, you didn't hear. What you saw, you didn't see." Adrian still hadn't spoken. Still hadn't moved. But his gaze never left hers. "You don't get to threaten journalists," Elena began, voice hoarse. The man's lips curled just slightly. "I'm not threatening you," he said. "I'm protecting you. If I were threatening you, you'd already be." He stopped. Something flickered behind his irises. They flashed amber. Not human. Elena took a step back. The man leaned in, voice a whisper now. "You think you're here to write about a man. You're not. You're standing in front of a storm in a suit, and you're lucky I got here first." "Who are you?" she asked. His name wasn't on any public list, not in her notes. Not in the press packets. Marcus Draven, he said. I manage storms. And with that, he grabbed her elbow, not hard, but firm enough that resistance would look like scandal. Elena struggled, but not too much. There were cameras everywhere. He opened the door to the hallway and pushed her out, careful, controlled, like a scene being filmed. You don't belong here, Miss Marr, he said smoothly. Consider this your only warning. The door shut behind her with a finality that rang in her bones. Elena stood frozen in the hallway, breath short, heart pounding. She pressed a hand to her chest, only then realizing. Her blouse was torn. A single, fine tear down the collar. Tiny, barely visible. But right at the edge, barely breaking the skin, was a thin red line. A scratch. No, a claw mark. Her fingers trembled. She turned back toward the closed door, staring through the frosted glass. The lights inside flared once, then dimmed. And in the haze, for the briefest second, she saw it. Not a man's shadow. A wolf's. Broad-shouldered. Sloped spine. Muzzle parted in silent fury. Elena staggered back, heart hammering. And then it was gone. Chapter 2, A Name You Can't Trace. By morning, the scratch had faded to a faint welt. Elena stared at it in the mirror of Marlowe Press's tiny bathroom, tilting her head so the fluorescence caught the angle just right. Her fingertips hovered near the mark, close but never touching. It was barely there now, just a thin curve above her collarbone, more like the memory of pain than pain itself. But it hadn't been there the day before. She closed the bathroom door and stepped into the narrow office hallway, her boots clicking too sharply against the scuffed laminate floor. The place smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink. She passed Lena's desk without pausing. Her friend didn't look up. You're walking like a woman who's seen either the face of God or a penis worth ruining her life over. Elena tossed her notebook on the desk. Neither. Just a shadow that growled. Lena raised a brow. Elena ignored it. She slumped into her chair, opened her laptop, and typed, Adrian Vale, full name, legal record, birth certificate, family registry. What came up was less than nothing. There were curated headlines. Hundreds of them. Vale's stare breaks the internet again. Who is Hollywood's wolf-eyed king? The face that won't fade. Adrian Vale crowned Man of the Year, again. Red carpet appearances. Fragrance campaigns. Clips of him smiling too softly, speaking too little, laughing in sound bites. And yet, no school history. No baby photos. No pre-2015 mentions at all. Just one file. One digital birth certificate, uploaded the same year his breakout film released. No parents. No hometown. Just a name and a date. Tell me I'm not insane, Elena muttered. Lena wheeled her chair over. She squinted. That's cleaner than a presidential file. Exactly. He appeared out of nowhere and everyone just accepted it. Like, oh look, a beautiful man descended from Olympus, and now he has a Chanel contract and a $60 million face. Lena typed something quick, fingers flying. You want to go deeper? Please. Say no more. She slipped a flash drive into the tower, opened a VPN, and muttered, Blessed be the IT intern who never changed the union's root password. Elena leaned in. What are you doing? Digging past the PR firewall. Everything filtered to the public goes through Silverlight's entertainment arm. But if he's in the acting guild, there has to be a back end. A few moments passed in tense silence. Then Lena sat back. Got him. Elena's heart kicked. There's a personnel tag. He's in the system. Registered under Adrian Vale. Standard licensing for international film contracts. But, his file is locked. Not celebrity privacy locked. I mean government seal, 3-factor authentication, level 7 clearance locked. Elena blinked. Level 7? Same class as ex-military and Black Ops. And there's something else. Lena clicked a button and highlighted a portion of text. Elena leaned forward. Psychological monitoring status, red. Cleared under Federal Wellness Executive Order 617, confidential exemption. Subject granted ongoing eligibility despite irregularities. Elena, Lena said slowly. He's on some kind of permanent mental health override. That's not possible. It shouldn't be. Especially not for someone with 5 active contracts and a pending political endorsement. Elena swallowed hard. They gave a man who growled like an animal a psychological exemption to stay famous? Lena hesitated. You said growled. Elena didn't respond. Instead, she reached for her phone. There were still fingerprints on the case from last night. Her thumb hovered over her voice memos, but the recorder Marcus had taken was gone. Stupid. Too direct. Too unguarded. Still, the sound lived in her memory like a bruise. Okay, she said. I want to know where he was before 2015. Real hometown, guardianship, anything. I'll try, Lena said, cracking her knuckles. But you're picking up the next 3 weeks of cold brews. Before Elena could reply, a voice interrupted her. You're Elena Marlowe? They both turned. Marcus Draven stood in the doorway, wearing a black wool coat that didn't match the California sun, flanked by 2 men in suits who did not smile. Elena's blood iced over. Marcus stepped into the room slowly, gaze sweeping across Lena's monitors before settling on Elena with cool disinterest. He didn't look rushed. He looked like a man who'd already won. I'd like to speak with you, he said. On whose behalf? Elena asked. He ignored the question and stepped closer. The men behind him remained still, like shadows that hadn't decided whether they were smoke or muscle. Marcus gestured to the hallway. Outside. I'm not. He tilted his head, slow and deliberate. Elena. I don't want to discuss the matter of last night in front of anyone not cleared to hear it. Lena bristled. She's not under NDA. You can't just walk in here. Marcus turned his gaze on her. Miss Cho, isn't it? Perhaps you'd like me to subpoena your search history first. Lena went silent. Elena stood, spine straight, and walked past him without a word. She didn't let him hold the door. They stepped into the hallway. No one else was around. The hallway was narrow, empty, the air somehow colder. Marcus folded his hands behind his back. You're writing a story. Is that a question? He smiled, and it was an expression made entirely of bone and control. It's not a threat, either. Not yet. He leaned in, lowering his voice. But you should know what kind of flame you're playing with. Adrian isn't your usual brand of troubled celebrity. He's not an affair waiting to happen. He's not a nervous breakdown or a PR scandal. I never said he was, she said. You didn't have to. Marcus paused, then added, softly, you think you saw something. Heard something. What you witnessed last night was a private moment. It should never have happened. And if you pursue it. Elena didn't flinch. You'll what? Sue me? I won't need to. The moment you publish anything remotely close to the truth, your press badge will be revoked. You'll be discredited. Your partner will be fired, and your little hobby of chasing myths will come to a very unremarkable end. You seem awfully invested for someone who's just a manager. Marcus's smile didn't move, but something shifted in his eyes. He stepped closer. The difference between men and monsters, he said, voice just above a whisper, is how long they let you believe you're safe. Elena held her breath. He didn't blink. You think you've gotten close to the truth. But the truth isn't standing in front of you. It's circling you. And if you get too close, it doesn't growl. It bites. She felt it again then, something primal, old, pressing behind the air. Like the scent of cedar in a forest right before the storm. And iron. Faint. Familiar. Marcus turned and left. Elena didn't move for a long time. When she finally returned to her desk, Lena looked up, face pale. Was that? Yeah. What did he say? Elena sat slowly, blood still roaring in her ears. He said I was close. She didn't tell her the rest. She waited until later, after the office emptied, before she returned to the bathroom. She peeled down the collar of her blouse again. The scratch was still there, but it wasn't shaped like a fingernail. It curved. Too clean. Too deep. A mark. A bite. Chapter 3: The Studio with No Mirrors. It started with a lie. A borrowed lanyard, a borrowed name, a confident nod to a clipboard-wielding assistant who didn't look up from her phone as Elena passed through the sliding glass doors of Silverlight Studios. The interiors smelled like polished wealth, leather couches, cold coffee, expensive perfume misted through vents. Her boots were too loud. Her jeans too worn. But no one noticed. Or pretended not to. Everyone here moved quickly but with deliberate aim, like they were performing for an audience they couldn't see. Elena fit in just fine. Her borrowed ID badge read in turn, Script Department. No last name. No photo. Vague enough to not be questioned unless someone wanted to question her. And right now, everyone was too busy watching him. Adrian Vale. She spotted him across the rehearsal floor, standing beneath a high, circular lighting rig. His body moved with that predator stillness again, shoulders broad, chest rising and falling with rhythm like he was counting his own breaths. He wore black, as usual, but the color looked different on him. More like a warning than a uniform. A director clapped twice. Ready, Adrian? Let's take it from the hospital hallway, page 62. Adrian didn't answer. He stepped into position with a silent grace that made Elena's throat tighten. The scene began. Lines were delivered. Someone playing a dying wife sobbed on cue. Adrian dropped to one knee beside her, said his dialogue with a sorrow so clean it didn't sound acted at all. Then, the change happened. He stilled. His jaw clenched. His eyes, dark at first, flared with something molten. Like his pupils were catching light that no one else could see. He stumbled back from the other actor, knocking over a prop table. The sound shattered the room's silence. Cut, someone yelled. But Adrian didn't stop moving. A low sound escaped his throat. Not frustration. Not pain. A growl. Elena stiffened. He gripped the back of his neck, turned sharply toward the side exit, and vanished through the door like the walls themselves were closing in. The room stilled. A few crew members muttered. The director shook his head, muttering about pushing too hard and needing space. No one followed him. Except her. Her feet moved before her brain caught up. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was stupidity. But she ducked through the same side door and found herself in a long corridor that sloped downward past costume bays and soundstage access signs. At the end, there was a black steel door left half open. Elena stepped through. The temperature dropped. It took a moment for her eyes to adjust. The walls were lined with dull, silvery panels, no mirrors, no windows. Just lightless silver. She ran her fingers along one, shivering. Cold. Metallic. And not reflective at all. A black square in the ceiling suggested a skylight, but it was bolted shut with some kind of steel plating. No light. No exit. And then she saw him. Adrian was crouched at the far side of the room, back against the wall, hands gripping either side of his skull like he was trying to hold it together. His breathing was ragged. Go, he growled, not looking at her. Elena froze. His voice was deeper than before. Rougher. Like something inside was straining to climb up his throat. You shouldn't be here, he said again. You need to go. Now. I can't, she said before she even understood why. Her voice sounded small in the silver-echoed space. He turned his face to her, and she nearly staggered back. His eyes. Not brown. Not gold. Something in between. Like glass catching a dying fire. And his irises were splitting, cracks of glowing amber threading through the color, blooming from the center like molten veins. She saw the way he shook. Not like he was afraid. Like he was holding something back. His nails were longer. Just enough to be wrong. His shoulders were trembling beneath his shirt, muscle fiber twitching like wires pulled too tight. Why did you follow me? He asked, voice barely controlled. You don't know what I am. No, Elena whispered. But I know what I saw. He looked away sharply, as if her seeing was the worst of all sins. I don't want to hurt you, he said. You won't. I will. Something in his voice cracked, and that broke something in her, too. You growled yesterday, she said, quietly. Not at me. But you could have. He didn't speak. You didn't touch me then, she continued. And you won't now. His jaw clenched, his throat working. Why aren't you afraid of me? He demanded. I am, she said. But I'm more afraid of not knowing. Silence fell again. Then he stood. Slowly. Every movement cautious, as if one wrong breath might set him off. He stepped toward her, and the light hit his face in a way that made him look less like a man and more like a memory of one. His skin was damp with sweat. The veins in his neck pulsed visibly. He smelled of something, cedar and blood and snow-soaked wind. Elena didn't move. He stood just feet away, looking at her like she was the last thing in the world he wanted to see, and the only thing tethering him in place. Leave, he said again, barely above a whisper. Before I lose what's left of me. Her breath hitched. And still she didn't move. I don't think I can, she whispered. He raised a hand, then stopped. Hovered. His fingers twitched. Then closed. He turned away. I'm not the man on the magazine covers, he said. I know. I'm not human. I'm starting to suspect. He let out a strangled laugh. It was short and sharp and sounded nothing like amusement. And then his body jerked forward, his hands slammed against the wall. Silver rang out beneath his palms. His shoulders bulged. His spine arched. Elena gasped. He snarled, the sound vibrating the very walls. Elena, he said. Her name in his mouth didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a prayer on the edge of breaking. She stepped forward. And he turned, eyes blazing, teeth gritted against some unspoken force, and shouted, Go. The sound knocked her back. Not by force, but by sheer gravity of it. She ran. The hallway spun around her as she pushed the door open and fled up the corridor, her heart thundering, her lungs on fire. She didn't stop until she burst back into the test room, into the safety of light and cameras and people who had no idea what lived beneath their stage. She didn't stop. Not even when she heard the crash behind her. A single low roar, not a man's scream. A creature's. Something cracked. Glass shattered somewhere behind her. She turned, barely breathing, and saw him, or what had once been him, disappearing into the dark beyond the soundproof corridor. But standing at the mouth of it now, arms folded and eyes like molten steel, was Marcus Draven. He said nothing. Just looked at her. Cold and quiet. Like a man staring at a girl who had just cracked the cage of something ancient. And might never be able to close the door again. Chapter 4, Teeth in the Contract. The envelope had no return address. Just her name, handwritten in slanted, elegant strokes across the front. Black ink. Thick paper. It looked expensive, the kind of stationery people used when they didn't want their fingerprints on anything digital. Elena turned it over 3 times before finally slicing it open with her apartment key. Inside was a single folded sheet. Printed. Standard legal formatting, blank signature lines. The letterhead read, Silverlight Entertainment, Behavioral Liability Addendum. Her eyes skimmed the text. It was a risk clause. An extremely specific one. Silverlight Entertainment is not liable for any bodily harm, emotional trauma, or unpredictable behavior displayed by contracted talent, including but not limited to unprovoked aggression, non-human auditory emissions, or violent physical contact. This clause extends to full indemnity for any injury sustained within a 10-meter radius of said individual during stress states or high emotional stimulus. At the bottom was a signature. Adrian Vale. Her throat went dry. There were notes scribbled in the margins. Underlines in red. An arrow pointed to a line she hadn't noticed. Subject's classification. Red. Conditional public exposure clearance. Her fingers trembled as she set the paper down. Not a scandal. Not even a secret. A legally sanctioned monster. She stared at the signature. Something in her wanted to believe it was forged. That this was fake. A hoax. But the curve of that, she'd seen it before. Signed on fan posters. On charity auction items. Perfect. Precise. Inhumanly consistent. She opened her laptop and checked her inbox. No new messages. No sender name. No explanation. Just a warning disguised as proof. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the Veldenridge Plaza lobby smelled like lemon oil, high expectations, and camera flashes. Silverlight was holding an event on the 19th floor, press only, RSVP enforced. Adrian was scheduled to re-sign a multi-year contract that would cement his face across every screen, billboard, and fragrance ad from here to Tokyo. Elena wore a ponytail and lipstick. No eyeliner. Simple jacket. Clip-on earpiece. She looked just enough like an underpaid media assistant to go unnoticed. A clipboard did the rest. She moved through the lobby without incident, flashing a fake clearance badge at security and sliding onto the guest elevator before anyone could question her. By the time she reached the ballroom, the crowd had gathered. Cameras. Assistants. Silverlight lawyers in suits worth more than her yearly rent. Adrian stood at the center of it all. He wore charcoal gray. No tie. Shirt unbuttoned just enough to make headlines, sleeves rolled halfway up. His hair was slicked back, the ends still damp from what she imagined was a very recent, very deliberate shower. He smiled for the cameras, but it didn't reach his eyes. He signed the first contract. Click. Flash. He signed the second. Another flash. Elena stepped closer, weaving past a PR girl fiddling with cue cards. Adrian looked up, briefly, as if catching the scent of something unexpected. Elena's voice was soft. Just loud enough to be heard. Do you ever worry you'll hurt someone? Adrian blinked. Her clipboard was up, face angled just so, as if she were confirming his name. I'm sorry, he said. Accidents, Elena said, still not looking at him directly. Ever afraid something might slip? That you won't be able to stop it? There was a pause. Then his smile cracked. A fraction. Not enough for the cameras. But enough for her. His voice dropped half an octave. Who are you? She turned her eyes to him now. And there it was again. That flicker. The reflection in his pupils. Something gold and wrong and flickering like fire behind glass. He stepped toward her. Elena. His voice was quieter now. Not surprised. Just resigned. You remember, she said. Not here. His gaze flicked to the crowd. You shouldn't be here. You signed it. He didn't ask what she meant. His jaw tightened. You don't understand what that contract protects. No, she said. But I think I understand what it hides. His hand brushed hers barely. The contact was electric. Skin buzzing. Like a spark crawling beneath her veins. Then a hand closed on her shoulder. Marcus. Of course. His grip was gentle, which somehow made it worse. He leaned in behind her, lips too close to her ear. Come with me. Now. She didn't argue. Not because she was afraid. Because she couldn't breathe. The parking garage was empty and echoing, lights flickering overhead like dying stars. The further they walked, the colder it felt. Marcus didn't speak. He walked just behind her. Just close enough that she could hear him breathing. When they reached the far corner, past the last luxury car, he stopped. She turned to face him. He didn't look angry. He looked calm. Serene. Terrifying. I thought we made ourselves clear, he said. You're out of your depth, Miss Marlowe. Your contract is public record. Not the one you received. She didn't blink. He took a step closer. You're not a journalist anymore, he said. You're a liability. And I'm the man they sent to remove liabilities. Her spine stiffened. You don't scare me. His smile was gentle. I don't have to. Then he exhaled. Just once. The scent hit her like a wave. Metal. Cedar. Ice. Something behind her eyes convulsed. Her stomach twisted. Knees buckled. She dropped to the concrete with a gasp, coughing, trembling, bile rising in her throat. Marcus watched her calmly. "I told you," he said. "You think you're close to the truth. You're not. You're just close to him." She looked up, vision blurred. Marcus's eyes weren't brown anymore. They burned amber. "You don't know what that means yet," he said. "But you will. And when it breaks you, remember this. We gave you a chance to walk away." He turned and left her there. Elena curled on the cold floor of the garage, every nerve shaking, lungs burning like she'd inhaled smoke made of teeth. Later, in the hotel elevator, Adrian stood alone. She didn't realize he was behind her until she stepped in and the doors closed. Silence. Her reflection trembled in the steel walls. He didn't look at her. "You should hate me," he said quietly. She turned. And what she saw in his eyes wasn't human. It wasn't monstrous either. It was sorrow. And gold. "No," she said, her voice barely audible. "But I don't." Chapter 5. The First Howl. The message came at 2:13 a.m. No caller ID. No signature. Just a single line. "Come alone." No phone. Sunset. "I'll be waiting." Elena stared at it longer than she should have, heart pounding beneath her ribs like something caged and restless. She didn't respond. She didn't delete it either. She simply memorized the coordinates that followed. And went. The drive out of the city took an hour. Long enough for the skyline to vanish behind her, for cell towers to give way to pine forests, for her thoughts to turn inward and spiral like smoke. Lena called her 3 times before she turned off her phone and left it locked in her glove compartment. The final text read, "You're either chasing a lead or walking into a crime scene. Check in by midnight. Or I call the cops and your ex." The road narrowed, then ended entirely at a black wrought iron gate. It opened for her without a sound. Adrian's house wasn't a house. It was a fortress masquerading as a luxury retreat. Glass and stone. Sharp angles, like a place carved from cliffside rather than built. Elena stepped out of the car. It was quiet. Too quiet. No birds. No wind. Just the strange hush of a night not yet begun. She walked to the front door. It was already ajar. Inside, the walls were too thick. She could feel it. A sort of containment. She passed a hallway lined with silver insets, polished but unreflective. No mirrors. No cameras. A far cry from the curated perfection of his public life. This place was made to trap sound. To withstand impact. To hold in whatever needed holding. Or whoever. Adrian was waiting in the center room, barefoot on the stone floor. He wore a black t-shirt, damp at the collarbone, and a pair of dark drawstring pants that clung to his hips like a dare. His hair was unkempt, curls falling across his forehead. But it was his eyes that caught her first. They weren't the same. Still brown, technically, but rimmed in something luminous. Like the last orange flicker before an ember turned to ash. "You came," he said softly. "You asked." His throat worked like he hadn't expected that answer. "You didn't bring your phone?" She shook her head. "Anyone know you're here?" She hesitated. "Lena might call the cops if I go missing. But she thinks I'm chasing a married director through a wine festival." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, but didn't stay. "Why now?" she asked. He didn't move. "Because tonight is close enough to the moon to matter. And I wanted someone here who might stay." He turned and walked down a side hall without waiting. She followed. The air grew colder. They passed rooms sealed with locks, others empty but for padded walls. Silver bars framed some of the doors, not as decoration, but as reinforcement. She paused near one with claw marks etched into the steel. Adrian stopped. His voice was distant. "That one was a bad night. Are you expecting another?" He didn't answer. They ended up in a room with no furniture save a thick chair bolted to the floor and an overhead skylight sealed shut. "Do you want to start the interview here?" she asked, trying to sound steady. He gave her a look that made her skin prickle. "There's no interview." She stared. "Then why?" I wanted to see if you'd come. Without a recorder. Without a way to run. He stepped closer. Elena didn't retreat. Not when his body heat hit her like a wave. Not when she saw his hands trembling, muscles twitching beneath the surface like something inside him had teeth and wanted out. He didn't touch her. But it felt like he had. The weight of his gaze. The rise and fall of his chest. The scent, faintly wood smoke and iron again, wild and cold. You should leave, he said. No. Elena. You invited me. That was a mistake. Then tell me to go. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His jaw locked tight. You don't get it, he whispered. This isn't a man having a breakdown. This isn't a broken actor screaming at God. Then what is it? I'm close to something I can't control. She stepped forward. Then let me see it. His breath caught. And something inside him cracked. He dropped to one knee, clutching his side like he'd been stabbed. A sound tore from his throat. Not a word, not even a growl, but something older. Elena knelt too, instinct without thought. His hands were rough with heat. She could see veins pulsing too close to the surface, his skin flushed and feverish. He looked up at her, and his eyes were no longer brown at all. They were gold. And wrong. He opened his mouth, but his teeth were different now. She should have been afraid. She wasn't. Elena leaned in, whispering, "You're burning." He shook his head. "I'm unraveling." She touched his shoulder. He flinched, but didn't pull away. "You need to go," he whispered again, voice strained. "Please. I don't want you to see what I become. I'm still here. You don't understand. I'm still here." And then he howled. The sound was not made for human ears. It cracked the silence, pierced the walls. Elena staggered, but didn't fall. She pressed closer, one hand gripping the back of his neck as if anchoring him to the floor, to her. Adrian shuddered. His spine curved unnaturally. He curled in on himself, trembling, panting. "You have to fight it," she whispered, forehead pressed to his. He hissed between his teeth. "You don't get it. I am it." His fingers dug into the stone floor. Claws, not nails, ripped through the tips. She should have run. She didn't. Because she saw something behind the fury. Something desperate. And then, the trembling slowed. His breath hitched. Once. Twice. And then he went still. Elena didn't move. She stayed kneeling beside him, hand still tangled in the sweat-damp strands of his hair. Eventually, his voice broke the silence. Small. Raw. "You are my what?" She blinked. "I don't know," she said. "But I'm not afraid." He raised his head slowly. And for a moment, he looked like a man again. But his shadow on the wall behind him was not. Chapter 6, A Bite in the Memory. The storm had passed, but the air still carried the weight of it. Elena sat up slowly, the blanket around her damp with sweat, breath fogging faintly in the chilled morning light. The window pane behind her was cracked open, letting in the scent of rain and pine and something more elusive, copper and ash, smoke and fur. Silence blanketed the room like an apology. She pushed off the blanket, legs unsteady as she rose to her feet. The concrete floor was cold beneath her soles as she padded through the hallway, past the metallic inlays and padded doors. Her skin prickled the closer she got to the main room. And then she saw him. Adrian was sprawled on the floor, half-curled like something felled in mid-transformation. Naked. Blood-streaked. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. His hands, torn, clawed, were coated in dried red and dirt. The boards beneath him were cracked in a perfect arc, as if something massive had landed there. He didn't stir. The glass skylight overhead had been blown open. Moonlight long gone, replaced now with cold gray daylight that did nothing to soften the brutality of the room. Elena stepped closer. Her fingers hovered above his back, tracing, not touching, the line of bruises blooming like ink beneath his skin. She crouched. Her breath trembled. There was blood on the floor. Blood on his lips. Blood at the base of her own throat. She touched it slowly, then froze. Her jaw ached. Not pain, pressure. She slipped her hand lower, brushing her collarbone, and there it was. A bite. Not deep. Not puncturing. But there. Imprinted. Like the ghost of a claim never fully spoken. Her fingers trembled as she pulled away. A mark. He'd marked her. Not fully. Not intentionally. But instinct had driven him close enough to leave something behind. She sat back, stunned, eyes wide as the heat crawled up her spine. Not shame. Not fear. Something else. Something that tasted like surrender. Not hers. His. She stood too quickly and backed toward the doorway, heart hammering. Adrian groaned. She turned just as he stirred, arm shifting beneath him, one knee dragging forward as if pulled by an invisible thread. "Elena," he rasped. His voice was barely there, gravel thick and hoarse. She said nothing. His eyes fluttered open, gold flickering in the irises before fading to a soft brown, haunted, heavy human. "I didn't," he started, but his mouth wouldn't form the words. "You didn't finish it," she said, voice flat. "But you started." He flinched like her words had fangs. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't," she said. "That's not the problem." He sat up slowly, muscles straining with the motion. His skin was slick with dried sweat and blood. His breath hitched as he looked at her. "You stayed," he whispered. "You asked me to leave." "You didn't mean it." "No," he admitted. "I didn't." Silence fell again. "I didn't mean to mark you." "I know. You shouldn't be here." "Too late." He let out a weak, broken laugh. "Yeah, it is." She helped him to the sofa, wrapped him in a blanket. Neither said anything as she fetched a glass of water and set it near his shaking hands. His fingers didn't touch hers this time. But his eyes did. The house was darker by nightfall. The storm had returned, gentler now, a steady rhythm of rain tapping glass. Adrian had fallen into a deep sleep again, this time on the couch, chest rising with a slow, even cadence that made him look less like a monster and more like something slowly stitching itself back into the shape of a man. Elena sat on the edge of the stairs, watching the moon through the high window. Her hand still hovered near her collarbone from time to time. Not because it hurt, but because she could still feel the heat of it. The weight of that moment. Of being chosen. Not out of romance. Out of instinct. She should have been afraid. But all she could feel was tethered. Like part of her no longer belonged entirely to herself. The door creaked. Not the front one. The one to the basement corridor. She stood. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Then a voice, smooth, amused, sharp as a blade freshly dipped in wine. "I thought I might find you here." Elena turned. Marcus stood beneath the threshold, dressed in black from collar to cuff, rain glistening on his coat like it had been hand-painted there. He wasn't wet. Just damp enough to look deliberate. She didn't speak. "You have no idea what you've stepped into," he said calmly. "Maybe not," she replied. "But I know what I saw." He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, predatory. His eyes flicked once toward the sleeping figure on the couch, then back to her. "You think he let you stay because he trusts you?" She didn't answer. "He didn't," Marcus said. "He let you stay because something in him already claimed you. And that's worse than a mistake. It's a flaw. He didn't mean to." Marcus tilted his head. "Oh, Elena. That's the tragedy. Of course he didn't. That's what makes it irreversible." She took a step back. He didn't pursue. "Do you know what a bite like that means?" he asked softly. "Even incomplete? It's not affection. It's not attraction." She said nothing. "It's ownership." Her throat tightened. Marcus's voice dropped further, barely above the sound of rain. "You're not his salvation. You're his poison. You will unravel him. From the inside out." "I don't believe you." "You should." She moved to walk past him, but he blocked her path. "Do you know why wolves don't love their prey, Elena?" She stopped. "I'm not his prey." "No," he murmured. "You're worse. You're his mate." which means he can't stop himself from loving you, and he'll tear apart everything, everyone, to keep that love alive. She met his eyes. Then maybe that's not love. Marcus smiled. It wasn't kind. He leaned in, close enough for her to feel the heat of him. The scent of metal and wind and something that made her vision blur. You don't know what love looks like among creatures like us, he whispered. You'll find out. And by then, it'll be too late. He started to walk away, but paused at the door. You'll want to remember this, he said. Moonbite. Incomplete or not, it's already in you. She watched him fade into the dark hallway. His final words slid around her neck like ice water. Moonbitten Elena means one of two things. Run or die beside him. Chapter 7. Wolf on the Red Carpet. The lights burned like a second sun over Veldenridge. Every flash from every camera carved shadows across the crowd, turning the red carpet into a holy place for the obsessed. Screaming fans pressed against barricades, arms lifted, eyes glistening with adoration and tears. Microphones jostled. Paparazzi shouted over one another. Someone held up a giant cardboard cutout of a magazine cover, Adrian Vale, man of the century, and a girl no older than 17 wept openly beside it. Elena had never seen anything like it. Even with her press lanyard pressed flat against her borrowed blazer, even with the media badge Lena had forged the night before and her hair pulled back in an unfamiliar style, she felt exposed. Not because of who she was, because of who he was. And where he stood. Adrian Vale stepped from the black car like a secret unwrapped in slow motion. The world didn't breathe for 3 seconds. Maybe 4. He wore black. Not just any black. The kind of tailored velvet that shimmered midnight blue under certain lights, custom cut to his long frame, the fabric clinging to his shoulders like it knew it belonged there. His shirt was dark, collar open, the gleam of a single silver chain vanishing into the hollow of his throat. He didn't wave. He looked. Slowly. Intentionally. Like a monarch surveying territory. Like a god on walkabout, pretending, for one night only, that he could be worshipped instead of feared. The noise of the crowd hit its peak when he smiled. Elena's heart lurched. Not from adoration. From recognition. He was beautiful. And he looked like he was dying. His posture was perfect. His presence unbreakable. But his hands twitched. Fingers spasming at his sides just barely enough to notice. His eyes didn't blink when they should have. His chest rose too fast. He moved as if holding himself together one breath at a time. And then he looked at her. Across the velvet ropes. Across the hundreds of screaming bodies. Across the distance, she didn't realize she'd been shrinking. Their eyes locked. It was like being pulled under a tide. Like everything else went silent, the cameras, the screams, the lights. All that remained was gold. His expression didn't change. But his gaze, raw, razor-sharp, unguarded, sliced straight through her. She forgot how to breathe. Then someone called his name. A camera snapped. And Adrian Vale smiled. Perfectly. Cleanly. Like nothing in the world had touched him. Like he wasn't unraveling under the weight of the moon rising overhead. He moved forward, taking the next few steps like he hadn't just looked at her like that. Like she was a weapon pressed against his ribs. Like she was the one thing he couldn't afford to break in front of the world. The lights swallowed him again. Elena slipped past the barricades and into the backstage area with ease. No one questioned a woman holding a clipboard and moving with practiced irritation. The studio's media zone was a maze of velvet curtains, quick change booths, and mirrorless dressing rooms. Screens lined the walls, broadcasting the event with only a few seconds delay. She caught glimpses of Adrian everywhere, angled perfectly for live stream feeds. His face on the big screen. His silhouette on every reflective panel. But nowhere did she see him. Not the Adrian who had pressed his body into the floor of a moonproof room. Not the one who had trembled with the weight of what he hadn't said. Hey, media's off limits after 7:30, someone barked. Elena turned. I'm with the French syndicate. I have to collect red carpet verbiage for subtitles. The assistant blinked, lost. Okay. Just stay out of the main feed's eyeline. Sure. She was already gone. Backstage smelled like hairspray and fear. Then she saw him. Alone. Adrian stood in the corner of a dressing suite, one hand braced on the wall, the other clenched tight at his side. His skin was flushed at the throat, and his hair, once perfect, was damp near the temple. He was breathing through his teeth. And for the first time since she'd met him, he didn't hear her coming. Elena, he said without turning. She stilled. I saw you, he continued. In the crowd. You looked. He exhaled hard. Don't lie. She stepped closer. Like a star. That's the point. His voice was tight-coiled. I'm supposed to look like I'm made of something else. Then why do you look like you're about to tear the walls down? He turned slowly. His eyes weren't fully gold, but the edges shimmered with heat, like the wolf inside was scratching at the surface. I'm holding it back. Why? Because I have to. No one's watching here. He smiled. Not the charming one. The real one. Not even you are supposed to be watching. She stepped closer. Then why let me in? I didn't. You looked at me like you'd known me 1,000 years. He stepped forward. The space between them vanished. You're not supposed to see me like this, he said, voice almost broken. Not here. Not now. She looked up at him. I already did. He pressed his hand flat against the wall behind her, arm a cage of muscle and fire. His breath hitched. So many eyes, he whispered. And none of them see me. I do. I have to be perfect out there. I have to be untouchable. A myth. His mouth was inches from hers. I have to be seen by everyone. But not by me. His hand moved to her jaw. Not rough. Just certain. I can't afford for you to see me, he said. Because if you do, I'll stop pretending. And what happens then? His eyes flared. I won't be able to stop touching you. The words scorched her. Then the earpiece on his shoulder crackled to life. Adrian, 5 minutes. Final walkthrough. He closed his eyes. His forehead dropped to hers. You make me forget how to lie, he whispered. You make me want to be lied to, she breathed back. Footsteps passed outside. He didn't move. But when he opened his eyes again, they were flat. Brown. Familiar. Go, he said. Adrian. You have to. Before I do something that breaks us both. She stepped back. He didn't follow. He turned, straightened his jacket, and walked back toward the stage lights like a man heading to his own crucifixion. As the curtain parted for him, the crowd screamed. And Elena watched from the shadows, realizing the worst truth of all. She wasn't just falling for the wolf. She was falling for the part of him no one else was allowed to love. Later, as the broadcast replayed on endless screens, she heard his voice echo through her memory. I have to be seen by everyone, but not by you. And she knew. He hadn't meant it as rejection. He'd meant it as prayer. Chapter 8, The Smell of You. The hallway outside the recovery suite was quiet, sealed off from the chaos of the event still buzzing through the upper floors of the studio tower. Security guards stood at both ends, stiff-backed and stone-faced, but neither noticed the woman who slipped inside the side door with a mop bucket and press-on badge labeled Sanitation Services. Elena moved like shadow. The adrenaline from the red carpet still hadn't faded. Her skin tingled with the memory of Adrian's voice, the way it had trembled near her ear like it was trying not to beg. She hadn't planned to follow him, not really. But she had heard someone mention low fever, elevated vitals, a precautionary isolate. She didn't need to guess what that meant. The hallway beyond the private medical wing was silver-toned and sterile. No staff. No cameras. Just one room with the door cracked, a soft rhythmic beeping behind it. She slipped inside. Adrian was half-sitting on a wide medical cot, shirt discarded, chest sheened with sweat. And 4 trailed from his left arm into a bag of something dark and slow-dripping. His skin glowed too warm under the clinical lights, color flushing high along his cheekbones and down the line of his throat. He looked dazed, but not unaware. His head turned before she even took a full step. "Elena," he rasped. Her breath caught. He wasn't surprised. He was waiting. She stepped forward. "They said you were burning up." He exhaled, eyes fluttering closed. "Only on the inside. I shouldn't be here." "No," he opened his eyes. "But I need you to be." She swallowed hard. "Adrian." His hand lifted slightly off the bed, fingers curling. "Come closer." Something in his voice bypassed her spine entirely. She moved before she could think. His fingers found her wrist. Not hard. Barely touching. He inhaled. Slow. Deep. Like the first breath after being submerged for too long. His lashes fluttered. His jaw flexed. "You smell like me," he whispered. She froze. "What?" His thumb brushed the inside of her wrist. "I didn't realize before. But now, it's all over you." "I haven't." He sat up straighter, eyes flickering. "No. Not in the way you think." His gaze lowered, locked onto the base of her throat. Her collar had slipped slightly, revealing that faint crescent near her jaw. That almost bite. He leaned in. Close enough she could feel the heat of him. Close enough his breath stirred the hairs along her neck. "You're still marked," he murmured. "Even if I didn't finish it." Her throat tightened. "I know. And you stayed." "I couldn't leave." His lips were so close she felt the shape of his next words before he said them. "You don't know what it means to carry my scent." "Then tell me." "It means every instinct I've buried for years is now screaming to finish what I started." She didn't back away. "Then why haven't you?" His breath hitched. Because she had given him the thing he feared most. Permission. He reached for her, hands trembling, and she let him. His fingers brushed her waist, skimming the fabric, touching but not taking. His forehead dropped to her shoulder, and she could feel him fighting it, the tremor beneath his skin, the ragged control that held his body still even as everything inside him begged to move. "I want," his voice broke. "God, I want." She slid her hands up his back. His skin was hot, muscles locked and tense beneath her palms. "You're not hurting me," she whispered. "That's the problem," he said. "I don't want to stop." She tilted her head, just enough to bear the curve of her throat. He inhaled again, and the sound he made was not human. He pulled back fast. Too fast. Almost violently. His body lurched away from hers as if she were fire, as if proximity alone might burn him open. He stumbled toward the bathroom, hand grabbing for the polished steel handle of the reinforced shower chamber in the far corner of the room. "Don't follow me," he growled. "Adrian." He didn't let her speak again. The door slammed shut. A lock clicked into place. The sound of running water began a second later. A freezing cascade meant to numb him back into something safe. Elena stood in the middle of the room, chest heaving, her skin still aching from the closeness, from the almost. She didn't leave. Instead, her eyes drifted to the floor, to the sweat-darkened trail his body had left behind, and then, unintentionally, toward the mirror lining the inside of the open medical cabinet. What she saw made her breath catch. Across his back, just before the door had closed. For long, deep scratches. Angled. Violent. Self-inflicted. Like a man clawing his own shoulder blades to keep from reaching for something he wanted too much. He wasn't locking her out because she disgusted him. He was locking her out because she was the only thing that didn't. Somewhere behind the wall of steel and rushing water, she heard him gasp again. A sound of pain. Of restraint. Of hunger. And the worst part wasn't that she couldn't reach him. The worst part was she no longer wanted to pull away. She leaned her head against the door. Softly. Whispering his name like a secret she wasn't supposed to know. Unseen from the monitors overhead, tucked inside a darkened control room 10 floors below, Marcus watched the feed through a thermal filter. His eyes flicked from the pulsing warmth of Adrian's silhouette, curled in ice, to Elena's form, lit up like a flame against the metal. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just leaned forward, tapped a single key, and murmured, "Too late now, little lamb." Chapter 9, Trending Beast. The internet bled. A single 37-second video, grainy and filmed from behind a half-closed curtain, detonated like a bomb across every corner of social media. It began in shaky silence, the dark silhouette of a man half-shadowed in a dressing room, his chest bare, his back trembling under the low hum of fluorescent light. Then came the sound. Not words. Not breath. A growl. Deep. Low. Animal. Adrian Vale's voice unmistakable and monstrous. And then blackout. No context. No clarification. Just a hashtag that caught fire within 10 minutes. Beast behind Vale. By dawn, it had climbed to #1 globally. Wolf Vale _fan club. I knew there was something feral about his stare, flesh face beast behind Vale. Cinema dreams. Tell me again how that's not a literal growl? Daily Moonbuzz. Silverlight hasn't released a statement. Something's up. Elax _rose. Was that a human sound? No BCM scared. Elena saw it all unfold from the corner booth of a diner she hadn't meant to end up in. The waitress had long since stopped asking if she needed anything. Her phone screen cast a pale glow against the untouched coffee at her elbow. By 7 a.m., someone had leaked her name. Not a full post. Just a tagged photo from 2 nights ago, backstage. Who's the girl behind the wolf? The replies were swift, vicious, viral. Vale devotees. She was seen with him again last week. Stay away from him. Mooncut baby. Does she even work in media? Bloodlines Films. If she sold that clip, hope she drowns in PR fire. Her inbox flooded. Her phone froze twice trying to open the Silverlight press page, which had already issued a preliminary statement. The alleged video of Mr. Adrian Vale is both unauthorized and manipulated. We urge the public to be cautious of edited material and unverified sources. She stared at the line. Manipulated. Unauthorized. And yet, true. She had seen him fall apart in rooms not meant for eyes. Had heard that sound in person, felt it shudder through the air between them like a current. He hadn't wanted anyone to hear it. And now the world had. The worst part? She hadn't leaked it. But someone clearly wanted her to take the fall. The text came at 8:26 a.m. You need to leave the city. Today. Elena blinked at the number. Unlisted. But she didn't have to guess. She didn't reply. 2 minutes later, another message. I will ruin you if I have to. Not because I want to. Because I must. She stared at the screen so long her vision blurred. Then her phone rang. She picked up. I didn't send that video, she said without preamble. I know, Adrian's voice replied, low and distant. But they don't care. The moment your name appeared, you became the explanation. So you're going to let them believe it? Silence. I don't get to choose what I protect anymore, he said. Yes, you do. No, he said more sharply. You don't understand what this means. You're not just in danger because you know. You're in danger because you matter. That's worse. Her throat tightened. So this is where you tell me to run. This is where I tell you it won't matter if you do. You think they'll come for me? They won't need to. She swallowed. Because you will? Another pause. Because I can't stop them. She tried to speak, but no words came. You smell like me, he whispered. You're marked. Do you know what that means now that this is public? I didn't ask for any of this, she whispered. Neither did I. But you let it happen. I let you happen. He sounded wrecked. Tired. And something worse resolved. Say the word, she said. And I'll vanish. I'll disappear into the woods, and no one will ever hear from me again. I want to, he breathed. I want to say it. Then say it. I can't. She felt her eyes sting. Then what am I supposed to do, Adrian? Live, he said, voice breaking. Live, even if it means forgetting me. She hung up before he could say another word. That afternoon, the Silverlight Crisis PR team held a closed-door emergency meeting. Adrian arrived through the underground entrance, flanked by security, the press already foaming at the glass exterior like sharks scenting blood. Marcus met him in the conference room, already scrolling through crisis response sheets on a glowing tablet. 5 hours since the leak, Marcus said. We've killed the link in 36 countries, but it's viral in closed fan servers. You have 3 options. Adrian said nothing. 1. Deny harder. 2. Stage a decoy meltdown. We leak a fake medical file. Make it look like a mental health episode. Public sympathy over scandal. Adrian looked through him. Marcus didn't stop. 3. You give me the girl. Adrian's hand twitched. Just once. Marcus raised his eyes. Not to kill. To remove. Erase. We relocate her. New identity. New city. She lives. But you never see her again. She'll hate me. Better than dying for you. Adrian exhaled slowly. Is that the plan? Marcus leaned in. His voice dropped to a murmur. You think this is about fans? About losing a studio contract? You're wrong. You're not just a celebrity, Adrian. You're a symbol. A leader. I didn't ask for that. You didn't have to. You were born with it. He tapped the tablet. And your people? The ones who really know what you are? They've seen the bite on her neck. They've seen the way you look at her. They're not talking about PR cleanup anymore. Adrian's jaw tightened. What are they talking about? Preservation. Silence. Marcus leaned closer. They're ready to erase the threat. With or without your permission. Adrian looked away. The door buzzed once, then shut. In a hotel bathroom 2 blocks from the studio, Elena scrubbed her collarbone with soap and hot water. Over and over. Her skin was raw. Pink. Nearly bleeding. The mark didn't fade. She stared at herself in the mirror, hands braced on the edge of the sink, the glow of her phone screen flashing another notification from a stranger telling her she was trash. A whore. A liar. A witch. She was all of it, apparently. And none of it. Because underneath all of it, one truth whispered like a fever in her blood. She didn't want to forget him. Even if it killed her. That night, the top comment under the trending tag Beast Behind Veil read, Full Moon Truthers. The worst monsters are the ones who smile best. Elena scrolled past it. But the words didn't leave her. Not because they scared her. But because they sounded like something Adrian would have said about himself. Far beneath the studio, Marcus entered a code and stepped into the vault-level communication chamber. The screens flickered to life. Satellite feeds. Thermal signatures. A blinking red icon labeled target, Marlowe, E. He leaned close to the microphone and said softly, Phase 1 complete. The pack is watching. Chapter 10, The Bite You Deny. The mountains swallowed sound. Elena stood beneath a canopy of pine and starlight, the air thinner here, every breath edged and cold. The road behind her was gravel and frost, winding through peaks like a scar. Adrian hadn't spoken since they left the city. He hadn't needed to. The truth was between them now, worn like a second skin. She followed him in silence up the narrow path toward the old stone lodge tucked in a cliffside, weather-worn, moss-slick, and ancient in a way that didn't just suggest history, but memory. This wasn't a hideout. It was something older. A place that had seen. Inside, the walls were bare but fortified. Metal crossbars welded into the frame. The windows narrow. No mirrors. No reflections. Just shadow and breath and too much silence. Adrian threw the lock behind them and moved toward the hearth, his shoulders too tense, his neck stiff from holding himself still. He didn't look at her. Not until she stepped closer. You didn't have to come, he said. I know. I warned you. I ignored you. He turned. Even in the dim firelight, she saw what the world never could. His beauty was the kind that hurt to look at. But not because it was perfect. Because it was breaking. He stepped closer. The quiet between them changed shape. She didn't flinch when his fingers reached for her face. Didn't tremble when he touched her jaw, thumb brushing the same place he had nearly bitten. You smell like me, he said again, voice thick. You said that before. Do you know what it means yet? I'm marked. Not fully. Then do it. His gaze snapped up to hers, and for the first time, something unguarded, terrified, flashed across his face. No, he said. I'm not afraid. You should be. She took his hand and placed it over her heartbeat. I'm not. He leaned in. Slowly. Reverently. When he kissed her, it wasn't the kind of kiss made for fairy tales or tabloid spreads. It was rough. Desperate. A collision of mouths and heat and the tension that had lived in both of them since the moment their eyes first met. She pulled him closer. He let her. Hands in her hair. Lips against her neck. His breathing ragged. His chest trembling. And then, his teeth grazed her. Not biting. Not yet. But close. Too close. He paused. Held there. Elena tilted her head, exposing more skin, not flinching. His body shook. And then, he pulled away with a ragged gasp, stumbling back like she'd set him on fire. No. Adrian. I can't. Why? Because you're too weak. The words hit like cold water. Because I'm human, she said. Because you'll die, Elena. If I finish the bond, if I mark you fully, you won't survive it. I'd survive you. You don't understand. Then make me. He looked at her then, like she was the most fragile and dangerous thing he'd ever touched. And whispered, I want you so much I forget what you are. But the moon never forgets. And when it rises again, if you're mine, it'll tear you apart from the inside. So that's it, she said, voice shaking now. You want me. You kiss me. You almost bite me. But you'll keep punishing me for being too breakable. I'm not punishing you, he said, voice low. I'm saving you. She stepped closer, pressed her hand to his chest. I'm not a weakness, she said. I'm just not you. You're not a god, she added, softer now. And I'm not prey. I bleed. You burn. That's not a reason to run. His breathing faltered. Elena. She leaned up. He caught her face again, kissed her harder this time, all teeth and heat and the ache of two people who weren't sure if they were meant to love or destroy. But before he could lose himself, before she could say yes with her body again, a sound split the night. A sharp hiss. Then pain. Adrian stiffened, a needle buried at the base of his neck. He staggered, turning just in time to see Marcus lower his hand. Silver glinted under the faint light. Enough, Marcus said. Elena shoved past him. What did you do? Marcus didn't answer. Adrian groaned, knees hitting the floor, one arm bracing himself before he fell completely. His eyes, half-lidded, gold flaring, too bright, locked on her one last time. Elena, he whispered, voice slurred now. I'm here, she said, catching him. His head dropped against her shoulder. She held him like that, rocking slightly, fingers in his hair, ignoring the heat rolling off his skin. He didn't move, didn't speak. Then, with the last of his strength, he breathed into her neck. They've started, looking at her journal. Elena froze. What? Adrian's voice was almost gone now. Your mother's, they know, don't go back. And then he collapsed. Marcus didn't look sorry. He wiped the syringe clean, slid it back into his coat, and straightened his cuffs. You sedated him, Elena snapped. I saved you, he replied. From what? From your own need to be special. She stood, furious. You think I came here because I want to feel chosen? You came here because you think love is stronger than instinct, he said. It's not. She stepped into his space. He stopped himself. This time, she didn't move. He studied her, cold and unreadable. He bit you once. Half a mark. That's why he's unraveling. His body knows you're unfinished. And it will finish it, Elena. Whether he wants to or not. I can make my own choices. Marcus nodded, lips pressed into a thin smile. Then choose to stay alive. Because I promise you, he won't survive killing you. And neither will the rest of us. She turned to Adrian, still unconscious in her arms. Marcus moved toward the door, pausing just long enough to add, They're watching now. You're not a secret anymore. He left. And she stood in the ruins of a moment that could have been a bond. Instead, it was a warning. Adrian had nearly claimed her. And the only reason she was still breathing was because he loved her enough to stop. Chapter 11. Blood in the Ink. The house had been empty for years. Not abandoned, Elena had made sure of that. She'd kept the utilities just barely breathing, had someone check the plumbing once a year, dusted every few months when she was back in town. But it hadn't been lived in since her mother died. Not really. The front steps still creaked the same way they had when she was a teenager, tiptoeing in after curfew, breath held like it might keep the floor from groaning beneath her guilt. Today, the groan felt like a warning. She stepped through the threshold into memory. The smell hit first, lavender, faded paper, and old paint. Her shoes echoed across the hardwood as she moved past the covered furniture, past the turned-down photographs, and into the back study. The room was locked. Her fingers found the key beneath the loose floorboard by instinct. She hadn't been here since the funeral. The door opened. Bookshelves lined 3 walls. The window blinds were drawn tight. On the 4th wall, a cabinet, cherrywood, hand-carved, no handles, stood like a secret she'd never been brave enough to touch. Until now. She pressed her hand to the left panel. Nothing. Then the right. A soft click. The panel slid inward, revealing a recess carved into the wall itself. Inside were journals. Dozens. Leather-bound. Some tagged with cloth bookmarks faded from sun exposure. Others wrapped in twine. Her mother's handwriting danced across the edges, slanted, tight, fierce. Notes were scribbled along the spines in symbols Elena couldn't decipher. She pulled one free. The paper inside smelled like earth and wax. Symbols adorned the corners. Silver ink. Sketches of canines with elongated limbs and twisted spines. And names. Not just human ones. Words shaped like howls. Curved consonants and jagged vowels. Elena couldn't read them, but her blood reacted to them. She flipped to a folded page tucked near the middle. A pressed scrap of newspaper fell out, followed by a thick, grainy photograph. Her mother, standing beside a long stone slab etched in strange markings. Above it, the heading. Silvermoon Serum Trials, Censored Notes, 1993. Her heart kicked hard. She fumbled for her phone and snapped images of every page, then texted Lena a batch. Found something. Old notes. Some in symbols. Lena's reply came in under 30 seconds. Send higher residential of the carvings. Elena knelt, pulling out more books. At the bottom of the stack, wrapped in linen, was something heavier. A fragment of stone. Rough, cool, speckled with dirt. She lifted it carefully into the light. Carvings adorned one side, symbols like the ones in the journal, but sharper, deeper. A line down the center suggested it had broken off something larger. Her fingers traced the markings. The stone thrummed beneath her touch. Almost like it breathed. She snapped a photo and sent it to. Lena's reply took longer this time. Holy shit. Translate. Now. Running it through. Enhancing contrast. The old language from the owl burial sites, right? From those smuggled dig scans in 19. Working. Almost done. Then. True name calls true soul. Blood-bound, silence eternal. Elena's skin prickled. What the hell were you studying, Mom? She turned back toward the other journals, digging deeper. One of the older volumes had been almost completely hollowed out, its center cut to cradle something rectangular. A faded map. Labeled in pencil. Thorfell Cemetery. Burial site moonlocked. She stared at it, heart loud in her ears. Then the back door creaked. The sound was soft. But it wasn't the house groaning. It was someone breathing. She turned just as the study door swung open. Marcus stepped in like he'd always belonged there. He didn't smile. He didn't raise his voice. Just looked at her. Then at the stone. How long have you known? He asked. Elena didn't answer. He stepped closer. I asked you once not to come this far, he said, voice low. You didn't listen. You knew my mother, she said, stepping in front of the cabinet. I knew what she wanted. She wanted the truth. She wanted to tear apart something older than her bloodline. And that killed her. No, Elena said. You did. Marcus's gaze flicked to the journal in her hand. You think that stone means anything? It's one shard. From one grave. And that writing. He nodded to the photo on her screen. It's not a prophecy. It's a warning. He moved faster than she expected. One hand grabbed the stone. The other snatched the phone. She lunged, but he'd already dropped the phone into his coat. He flipped open a small lighter. Flicked the wheel. The flame caught the edge of the journal in her hand before she could pull away. No, she screamed, slapping at it. The paper curled in seconds. The smoke smelled like sage and ruin. Marcus watched it burn. She died because she thought she could hold a wolf by the throat, he said. But blood doesn't tame blood. It spills it. You're afraid, Elena spat. No, he said. You are. You just haven't admitted it yet. He turned for the door. You don't understand what's coming. I know it's not yours to decide. He paused. Just long enough to say one thing more. You think you've been marked. But this is where the marking begins. And then he was gone. Smoke still drifted from the scorched pages. Elena knelt in the ash, coughing, heart pounding. She sifted through the blackened wreckage with shaking hands, tears blurring her vision. Then she saw it. A half-burned page, edge-charred but legible. A map fragment. The same site. Thorfell Cemetery. But this time, beneath it, a single scrawled line in her mother's handwriting. Don't go alone. Elena pressed the page to her chest. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a journalist chasing a headline. She felt like a daughter chasing her mother's ghost. Chapter 12, The Grave with Your Name. The cemetery didn't appear on any map. It took Elena 3 hours by train, 1 more by foot, and half a bottle of water to reach the edge of the Pinewood Valley her mother had scrawled into the margins of that ruined journal. The trail down wasn't a trail at all, just a gradual decline into silence and overgrowth, branches clawing at her arms, wet earth swallowing her boots, the kind of hush that pressed in around you like a held breath. The wrought iron gates were rusted open, swallowed by ivy and time. Beyond them stretched rows of half-sunken headstones. Some tilted like forgotten teeth. Others shattered clean through. But what struck her most was the absence. There were names, dozens of them, but most lacked any dates. No birth. No death. Just the carved echo of someone who had been, once, and then stopped being. She walked past stones labeled Auric Thorfell. Rhea Thorfell. Lyra, daughter of Fenris. The engravings were clean, untouched by weather. As if something maintained them. Or as if something needed them preserved. Then she saw it. Near the back of the lot, nestled between a dead yew and the crumbling wall of a long, rotted chapel, stood a stone more recent than the rest. Not gleaming, but deliberate. She stepped closer. Her heart dropped. Adrian Thorfell. Remembered but not buried. She stared at it. The silence cracked. It didn't make sense. Adrian was alive. She touched him, kissed him, held him as he broke. And yet this. Why would they carve your grave if you're not dead? She whispered aloud. That depends on what you mean by dead. She spun. He stood at the edge of the row, half shadowed by a stone arch. His coat was unfastened, his collar open, moonlight painting his skin the color of secrets. He didn't look surprised to see her. Just tired. Adrian. You shouldn't be here. I followed what my mother left behind. He stepped forward slowly. His voice was softer now. You're standing on hallowed ground. This? She motioned around them. This is a graveyard. This, he corrected, is a ledger. She blinked. A what? A place to record what can't be remembered. We don't bury bodies here. We bury names. Fates. He walked past her. Stopped at his own stone. I died when I turned 16, he said. At least, the version of me that wasn't needed anymore. Then who the hell have I been kissing? His jaw twitched. The mask. The one they created. The one that keeps cameras safe and followers loyal. Adrian Vale. He gave her a look that wasn't quite bitter, but wasn't anything close to soft. That name doesn't belong to me. It never did. It belongs to the wolves who decided I'd serve the pack better as a myth. She moved beside him. So you just, what? Pretend you're someone else. I perform. Constantly. Even now. She shook her head, stepping between him and the stone. I don't care about the alias. I don't care if you have claws, if your eyes change in the dark, if you tear holes in the sky when you scream. I care about this. She jabbed a finger against the marble. The fact that you've been erased from your own life. You think I wanted this? I think you survived it. And I think no one's ever asked if that was the same as living. That stopped him. The wind stirred. Something inside his face collapsed, just a little. I remember screaming when they told me I couldn't go home again. That I was too seen now. Too useful. They built Vale like armor. Dressed me in him. And when I stopped resisting, they praised me for being obedient. Elena reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. I used to beg them to let me visit my own grave. Just once. They said no one should see a dead boy looking alive. Her voice cracked. I see you. He looked at her. For once, not like she was temptation. Or a threat. But like she was real. You shouldn't. Why? Because it makes it harder not to want to be him again. She stepped forward. Closer. So close the grave was at their backs and only each other in front. Then be him, she said. Right now. Just for me. He didn't speak. Didn't nod. Just kissed her. And it wasn't desperate. It was devastating. The kind of kiss that said I was never meant to be kissed again. The kind that felt like stealing life back from the gods who'd already claimed it. His mouth moved against hers like he remembered something he'd never had. Her fingers slid into his hair. His hand pressed to her lower back. They kissed in front of his own name. Like it meant nothing. Or like it meant everything. She broke it first. Barely. I'm not here to expose you, she whispered against his lips. I'm here to ask if you've ever felt alive. His breath caught. He looked her in the eye. And for the first time, she saw the boy beneath the wolf. I did, he said. When? Just now. From a rise above the chapel, Marcus watched through a scope. Not a rifle. A lens. He tapped a small earpiece. They found the grave, he said calmly. And the girl? She's the one who woke it. A beat of silence. Then a voice replied. Is he talking? No, Marcus said. But he's kissing. Down below, Adrian held her close. His lips near her ear. And in a voice not meant for the world, he murmured. They don't just want to bury me, Elena. He pulled back. They want to be me. Chapter 13, You Can't Bleed on Camera. There were 6 cameras. For boom mics. 2 layers of concealer. And one wolf trying to hold himself together. Adrian stood center stage beneath a halo of white lights, dressed in slate gray and sculpted restraint, every line of his suit a whisper of curated perfection. Behind him, a LED screen read, Silverlight Global Forum. Stardust and Humanity, the future of empathy in entertainment. The irony clawed at his throat. 30 rows of seats curved out like a theater built for worship. Audience members clutched glowing tablets, social feeds streaming in real time. The event was being broadcast across 78 countries with live subtitles. More than 58 million viewers tuned in. And Elena was somewhere in the 3rd row. He hadn't known she'd be there. Until he saw her. It almost broke him. But he kept talking. Art, Adrian said, voice smooth, steady, requires vulnerability. But fame demands walls. The applause came on cue. He smiled. Not because he meant it. Because he'd been trained to. In the 3rd row, Elena sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes glossy. She wore a press badge she hadn't earned, borrowed from someone who owed her a favor and knew how to forge the right watermark. Adrian's eyes found hers between spotlights and silence. And in that moment, the entire crowd disappeared. "You're the only reason I can do this," his gaze said. "And the only reason I shouldn't." She didn't blink, didn't breathe, because she knew what it cost him to be up there, what he had already sacrificed, and what he was bleeding just to stand. Because he was bleeding. It started subtle, his posture hitching ever so slightly, like a muscle pulled too tight. His hand flicked once at his side, fingers flexing involuntarily. A sheen of sweat collected at his temple. The moon wasn't full. But it didn't have to be anymore. Not since he'd touched her. Not since he'd half-marked her. The beast wasn't waiting for the right phase now. It was waiting for the right crack. The moderator, a perky woman with perfect teeth and eyes too sharp for her own good, gestured to him for a closing statement. "And Mr. Vale," she said sweetly, "how do you personally balance the duality of being adored by millions while still maintaining," she laughed lightly, "a human soul?" He tried to speak, but his nose began to bleed. Not a drop. A slow, steady line. Crimson down sculpted lips. For a second, no one moved. Then the live stream exploded. Adrian's smile. "Wait. Is he okay?" Silvervale fanatic. "Is that blood?" Loving Wolf Vale. "He looks so pale, OMG Vale crack." Thorn fangirl. "Bro, that's not exhaustion, that's transformation." Loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face. Mooninder veins. His hands are trembling. Replay timestamp 39:27. Elena half rose from her seat before catching herself. Adrian pressed a tissue to his nose like it was nothing. Like it hadn't just pulled the curtain away from the perfectly manufactured reality of Vale. He forced a smile. "Forgive me," he said hoarsely. "I suppose even stars can bleed." Laughter. Nervous. Real. But his eyes? Still on her. He didn't say it aloud. He didn't need to. "Don't come closer." Because if she did, he wouldn't be able to stay standing. He turned away, barely bowing, then exited stage right before the moderator could stop him. The audience remained stunned. Some clapped. Most recorded. Behind the stage curtain, the silence was louder than the crowd. He didn't make it to the green room before collapsing into a chair, fingers trembling so hard they fumbled the mic clipped to his collar. Blood dotted his cuff. The door opened. Marcus entered. He said nothing for a long moment, then calmly removed the mic pack from Adrian's back, turning off the feed with a soft click. "You're unraveling," he said, matter of fact. Adrian's chest rose and fell. His eyes were still molten. "I saw her. I know. I didn't shift." "You almost did." Adrian clenched his fists. "It's not her fault." Marcus didn't respond. He sat across from him and laid something on the table between them. A black envelope. No label. No seal. "Just wait." "What is this?" Adrian rasped. Marcus met his eyes. "Your resurrection." Adrian didn't reach for it. "You're going to disappear," Marcus said quietly. "A staged breakdown. A medical emergency. You'll vanish from every feed for 6 months. Enough time for Silverlight to stabilize the brand." "And Elena?" Marcus's gaze didn't falter. "She'll be untouched." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "She'll be erased," he said, voice like ash. "No," Marcus corrected. "She'll be allowed to live. But only if you die. Publicly. Symbolically." Adrian didn't answer. His hand pressed to his nose again. No more blood. But the damage had been done. Back in the crowd, Elena sat frozen, heart a war drum beneath her ribs. Her phone buzzed constantly, notifications from fans, a warning from Lena, a cryptic message from an unknown number. "Get out of the city before midnight. They've already written the ending." She stared at the stage, now empty. The lights still burned. But the star was gone. And with him, the last illusion she could afford to believe in. That night, Twitter trending red. Vale breakdown. Stars bleed too. Find Elena. And somewhere in a locked room of Silverlight's tower, Marcus pressed his thumb to a screen and murmured into a private line. Begin Phase 2. Chapter 14. The False Interview. The Silverlight Executive Tower shimmered like a blade against the sky. Polished steel, black glass windows, and a silence that hummed with curated power. Elena stepped through the sliding doors with her chin up and her hands clenched into fists inside the sleeves of her coat. They hadn't called it an interrogation. They'd called it a media clarification. An opportunity to preserve journalistic integrity. The elevator that carried her to the top floor didn't play music. Just the low, almost imperceptible hiss of upward motion, like something breathing beneath the walls. She was ushered into a minimalist conference room, all chrome lines and pale light, the windows tinted against the city skyline behind her. A single table sat in the center. On it, a glass of water, a recording mic, and a crisp manila folder with her name printed neatly on top. Marcus Draven stood at the far end. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. Elena, he greeted her. Thank you for coming. I wasn't given a choice. You were given the illusion of one, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Which is how most things work in this world. She didn't sit. Marcus glanced at the chair. Then back to her. Suit yourself. He opened the folder. Pulled out a set of papers. Slid them across the table. What is this? She asked. A statement, he said casually. A very polite one. It outlines that you approached Mr. Vale repeatedly under false professional pretense. That your interest in him extended beyond acceptable boundaries of ethical journalism. That, in light of the emotional distress caused to him and Silverlight Studios, you have agreed to a formal and confidential retraction. Distress, she echoed. You mean the part where he bled on stage after you shoved him into a spotlight like a show dog? That was unrelated, Marcus said smoothly. The blood was personal. This is business. She crossed her arms. So this is your cleanup attempt? He tilted his head. This is a resolution. Clean. Quiet. Signed, notarized, and filed. No trial. No press conference. No tragic headlines. She stared at the paper. The Silverlight crest in the corner. The long, quiet line awaiting her signature. And if I say no? Marcus's smile was like glass, sharp, cold, and reflective. He reached into the folder and drew out a second stack. Photographs. Backstage at the red carpet. The Silvermoon press file watermark. Grainy shots of her slipping through a service hallway. A still of her badge, fake but passable. A freeze frame of her hand brushing Adrian's shoulder when she wasn't supposed to be there. And finally, one of her entering his villa. No timestamp. Just implication. Evidence, Marcus said softly. Of your continued pursuit. Your trespassing. Your failure to disclose your identity. Your presence during a medical emergency. Her jaw clenched. You had someone following me. No, he replied. We had someone watching him. You just kept stepping into the frame. She swallowed. He leaned forward. The truth doesn't matter, Elena. The narrative does. And right now, the narrative is teetering. You have two choices. Disappear quietly or let us paint you into a monster. She didn't speak. Marcus slid the pen across the table. Be smart, he said. Even wolves don't bite glass. Her hands were shaking. But not from fear. Not anymore. She picked up the paper. Read every line. Every lie. Every word that took her life, her story, her grief, and folded it into a digestible PR soundbite. Then she tore it straight down the center. And again. And again. Until only ash-colored confetti remained between them. She dropped the pieces on the table and looked Marcus in the eye. If you want me gone, she said, voice raw, you'll have to do it yourself. His smile didn't return. He stared at the shredded contract. Then at her. You think you're fighting a system, he said softly. You're not. You're fighting a bloodline. A pack. I've fought worse. No, he said. You've survived worse. This? You won't survive. Maybe not, she said. But I won't be quiet. She turned to leave. Marcus didn't follow. He simply watched her walk to the door. And just before she crossed the threshold, he said, "If you really are his mate, then you'll feel it." She froze. "When his heart stops," he said, voice low, "so will yours." He let the words settle. "I guess we'll find out." The door shut behind her with the soft hiss of something ending. But to Elena, it sounded like the start of war. Outside the tower, the city glittered like it didn't know what was coming. Elena stepped into the wind, the ashes of fear still on her tongue, but beneath it, a taste sharper than survival. Vengeance. Not the kind that killed. The kind that revealed. Because Adrian's world was made of mirrors. And she was done letting them only reflect what they chose to show. Chapter 15. The Leash You Asked For. The Thorfell Hall stood on the edge of the highlands, silent and ancient, its walls carved not for beauty, but for ritual. Pillars of black stone rose toward a vaulted ceiling etched with claw marks, and beneath them, at the center of the structure, was a room no outsider had ever walked into. Until now. Elena's breath ghosted in the cold air as she followed Adrian down a narrow stairwell, each step echoing like a heartbeat on stone. She didn't ask questions. Because she could feel it too. The shift in the air. The weight of what had happened here. What still lingered. They reached a heavy metal door embedded with symbols she couldn't read, but felt anyway, etched in blood and old vows, in pain and permanence. Adrian pressed his palm to the center. The door opened with a hiss. They stepped into the moonbind chamber. It wasn't large. A circular room, domed like a ritual scar. Walls glistened with silvery runes that pulsed faintly in the dark, like veins still carried echoes of moonlight. Chains hung from the stone hooks, old, rusted, ceremonial. And in the center, an altar. Not for worship. For claiming. Elena stared, lips parted. There was blood in the stone, dried, almost black. Not splattered. Written. Words carved with teeth, fingers, rage. Bound in howl, in hunger, in name. Break the mate, break the beast. She turned slowly. This is where it happens. Adrian stood near the wall, eyes shadowed, shoulders tight. This is where they bring us, he said softly. When instinct isn't enough. When the bond is half-born and we either seal it or sever it. Her fingers brushed the nearest rune. Which one were you brought for? He didn't answer. He stepped closer. Too close. His hands reached for her waist, not tender, but possessive, like the pull in his body had finally won over whatever reason he'd clung to. You have no idea, he whispered, what it's cost me not to bring you here sooner. His mouth hovered near her jaw, nose brushing her cheekbone. I thought if I left you alone long enough, I could forget the taste of you. Her heart pounded. You haven't tasted me. His eyes met hers. No, he said. But I've imagined it enough times to feel like a sin. Then he pushed her. Not violently, but hard enough that her back hit the stone altar and her gasp echoed off the walls. He pinned her wrists down, nose grazing her neck, voice wrecked and shaking. I want to mark you. Her breath caught. I want to make you mine so completely you forget who you were before me. I want to bury myself in you, teeth and all, until every cell in your body knows it belongs to me. She didn't flinch. I want to let go, he whispered, shaking now. I want to stop pretending I'm not 1 second from tearing the world open every time I smell you. His lips grazed the pulse beneath her ear. I want you to be the last mistake I ever make. She whispered, then do it. His whole body trembled. The moment pulsed between them like something alive, sweat, breath, tension, desire. His mouth opened at her throat. His teeth grazed skin. Then stopped. He froze. And instead of biting, he broke. Adrian's arms collapsed around her, his weight folding in like the wind had left his lungs. He buried his face in her neck, voice torn and hoarse. I can't. She wrapped her arms around him. You can. No, he said. Because if I mark you, if I claim you like I want to, you'll never leave. And I need to believe you can. Why? Because I'm going to destroy you, he whispered. And I want you to have the choice to run before I do. She pulled back just enough to grab his face, force his eyes to meet hers. Then don't give me a choice. He blinked. I don't want to be safe from you, she said. I want to be yours. His lips parted. And for the first time, he looked like the one who might shatter. But he didn't kiss her again. He just held her. Tight. Desperate. And beneath his breath, she heard it. I don't know how to love without turning it into possession. Then let it possess me, she whispered. Silence. Then, a door creaked. A slow clap followed. Marcus's voice cut through the air like a scalpel dipped in sarcasm. Well, that was touching. Adrian stiffened. Elena turned. Marcus stepped fully into the chamber, expression unreadable, suit pristine, silver-lined gloves on his hands. You've lost control, he said to Adrian. Again. Adrian moved in front of her instinctively, shielding her body with his own. I brought her here, he said. Not to bite. To show her who I was. You did both, Marcus said calmly. Don't worry. I've seen this play before. He walked toward them slowly. Elena didn't move. Tell me, Adrian, Marcus continued, voice soft. Did she beg you to make it official? Or just lie down and let the blood do the talking? Shut up, Adrian growled. No, Marcus said. It's time someone ended this delusion. He drew something from his coat. Silver. Long. Sharp. Elena's breath hitched. Adrian moved fast, but not fast enough. Marcus raised the blade, eyes glittering. You were never supposed to fall in love with your leash, he said. And you certainly weren't meant to choke on it. Then he lunged. Chapter 16. The Fong in the Flame. The Thorfell council chamber smelled of cinder and judgment. It was circular, like all things ancient and binding, stone columns rising into a domed ceiling etched with centuries of laws no one questioned anymore. 12 elders sat beneath the crest of the pack, their robes black and threaded with silver ash. The fire in the center burned blue. Adrian stood before them in silence, wrists bound in ceremonial cuffs lined with silver leaf, the scent of it making his skin itch and burn with every shallow breath. He wasn't allowed to speak yet. Not until the blood was named. Across the chamber, Marcus took the floor. Calm. Poised. Hands behind his back like the executioner, he didn't need to pretend he wasn't. We're gathered under ancestral fire to name the fracture, Marcus began. His voice echoed, controlled. Adrian Thorfell, firstborn of Riven's line, heir to the Dusk Mantle and current bearer of the Silver Light Veil, has violated the core principle of pack stability. A ripple passed through the chamber. By forging a half-bond with an unsanctioned human, he continued, he has compromised the emotional regulation of the Alpha line. He has exhibited uncontrolled howling during a non-lunar cycle. And, Marcus paused for effect, he has endangered the Veil itself by bleeding in front of 58 million humans. The final word hung in the air like a blade. One of the elders stirred. Do you deny the bond? He asked Adrian. Adrian's voice was hoarse. I don't. Another elder frowned. And do you deny you intended to finish it? I wanted her, Adrian said. That was never the crime. A murmured growl passed through the circle. But, he added, voice rising just slightly, I didn't bite. I stopped. I chose restraint. Marcus stepped forward again. But restraint is not the point, he said. The point is contagion. One uncontrolled bond leads to 10. 10 leads to rebellion. The human must not be permitted to carry the scent of the pack unchecked. He turned to the elders. The damage is already underway. The eldest of them all, a woman with hair like molten snow and eyes sharper than Fong, nodded once. So it is decided, she said. Adrian Thorfell is to be relieved of his silver light face and title. Adrian's body stilled. You're giving it to Elias? He asked. Marcus didn't blink. Your cousin was born to follow rules. You were born to fracture them. I made the brand, Adrian growled. And now, Marcus said, stepping forward, you'll be made an example. 2 guards moved in. They forced him to his knees. From a velvet box, Marcus drew a vial. Silver poison. Not enough to kill, but enough to mute. To strip the wolf from the howl. Elena arrived too late. The guards held Adrian down as the needle sank into the hollow of his neck. He jerked, spasming once, jaw clenched against the pain as the silver sank into his bloodstream like liquid fire. His pupils dilated. His spine convulsed. He let out a single breath, then fell silent. The elders adjourned without fanfare. Later that night, beneath the fire altar on the northern hill, the place where every Thorfell had bled before their first moon, Adrian collapsed again. The poison still surged through him. But something else was rising too. His body trembled, then shook. His hands curled like claws. The air thickened around him. His chest rose in ragged gasps. Then he howled. Not the full shift cry of a beast under moon command. This was different. Broken. Human. A sound not of hunger or power, but loss. And worse, love. A howl not meant for the moon, but for a woman. Shame flooded the night. Across the stone tier, the elders looked away. But not Elena. She ran to him. Through the ash and judgment, past the guards who no longer cared what she was. She fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around his shuddering body, pressing his face to her shoulder. He was burning. "I've got you," she whispered. His voice was almost gone. But he used it anyway. "Now it's your turn," he rasped, "to protect me." She held him tighter, tears streaking down her face. "I will." His hand found her waist, clutched hard. And in that broken grip was every word he couldn't say aloud. Behind them, on the stone ridge above the pyre, Marcus stood watching. Unmoving. Unsmiling. He turned to the second in command beside him and spoke low. "He's already marked her," he said. The other man's face paled. Marcus's voice was soft. "There's no undoing it now. Even if we kill him." He looked back at the two figures clinging to each other under ancestral flame. Then said, "She belongs to him now. And that means she belongs to us." The fire behind them crackled. And Adrian, still trembling in her arms, whispered against her throat, "I'll never let them have you." Elena kissed his forehead, her voice steady. "Then we make a new pact." Chapter 17. The Trial of the Human Girl. They stripped her of her name before they stripped her of her rights. Elena stood barefoot on the obsidian platform, hands bound in silver-threaded rope, her coat torn and bloodied from the trek down into the Thorfell tribunal caverns. She'd been dragged beneath the earth before sunrise, her voice hoarse from screaming and her skin bruised from resistance. She wasn't scared. She was furious. The chamber around her was carved from black mountain stone, ringed with fire braziers that gave off more heat than light. At the far end stood the judging circle, 12 Thorfell elders robed in silence and crowned in ash. And above them, mounted into the jagged wall behind the dais, the crest of the original bloodline, a wolf's jaw carved into rock, its teeth locked around a human heart. Symbolic, she thought bitterly. And convenient. Marcus stood in the center of the circle, dressed in ceremonial black. His gloves were gone, his hands bare. His voice, when he spoke, echoed off the stone like a sermon. "Elena Marlowe. Mortal. Daughter of the seer, Mara of the Ash Line. Unauthorized consort to Adrian Thorfell, heir of Dusk. Accused of emotional manipulation, seduction by intent, and unbonded contamination of an alpha bloodmate." Contamination. She almost laughed. Marcus continued, pacing slowly, addressing not her, but the watching council. The girl initiated contact, pursued private encounters, interfered with hormonal regulation during a known instability period. She entered sacred spaces, touched rites not meant for her species. She has no lineage, no markings, no place. Elena spoke, her voice low and lethal. "I have him." Gasps murmured from the shadows above, the stands where other wolves watched, cloaked in darkness. Even the fire flickered, as if shocked she dared interrupt. Marcus turned to her, eyebrow raised. "Excuse me." She stepped forward until the chains yanked tight against her spine. You talk about bloodlines, about rituals and rules, about what I don't have. But I have him. I have his scent on my skin, his name in my mouth, his howl in my bones. So don't tell me I don't belong here. One of the elders rose, voice brittle with age. You speak like a mate. Yet no mark seals you. Elena's mouth twisted. Because he was trying to protect me. From you. Another elder hissed. And how do we know this isn't manipulation? Mortal women have used weaker tools than tears to fracture dynasties. Are you listening to yourselves? Elena snapped. You built a god out of a boy and forced him onto a screen. You carved a mask and called it honor. And now you're terrified a kiss might break it. The chamber fell deathly silent. Marcus stepped toward her slowly. You claim to love him. I don't claim anything, she said. I do. Then you'll do it from a distance. She stared at him. He didn't blink. The sentence of this tribunal, he intoned, is conditional exile. You will not be executed. Yet. But from this moment forward, you are forbidden to be within 100 meters of Adrian Thorfell. If you violate that boundary, your death will be swift, sanctioned, and irreversible. Chains rattled behind her. From the fire pit's far side, 2 guards emerged, each carrying a length of silver-bound chain, looped and glowing. Marcus held one out to her, like an offering. A leash, he said softly, of your own choosing. Elena didn't move. Didn't flinch when the chains were fastened around her wrists like bracelets. She kept her eyes locked on Marcus. Does it scare you? She asked. That I didn't beg? His smile didn't reach his eyes. It disappoints me. Fear keeps people predictable. She was dragged backward, guards pulling her toward the dark corridor at the far end of the tribunal. But she twisted, resisted. Looked back. A heavy door was set into the wall iron, reinforced with ancient runes. Her heart knew what her eyes couldn't see. He was behind it. And then. Thud. The door trembled. Thud. It shuddered again. A dark smear of red began to seep beneath the seam. Thud. A howl, muffled, anguished, like the sound of bones breaking beneath skin. Her knees buckled. Elena, one of the guards growled. Keep moving. She didn't. Not yet. She stared at the door as if her soul was trying to claw through the iron. And on the other side, Adrian was bleeding for her. Literally. Later, when the chains were fastened to a runic post in a cold, windowless chamber, Elena sat alone. Her breath trembled, but not from grief. From fire. She pressed her hand to her chest, right over her heart, and whispered into the silence, "You're not the only one who knows how to survive in a cage." In the shadows above the tribunal, Marcus stood with his arms folded, watching the blood dry at the base of the sealed door. He said nothing, but his eyes narrowed. "She's marked," he said to no one. Then added, with something almost like admiration, "She just doesn't know who marked who." Chapter 18. Viral Death Threats. The first death threat was misspelled. The second wasn't. By the third, Elena had stopped counting. Her phone had become a weapon. Every time it buzzed, it sliced deeper, anonymous usernames screaming slurs in all caps, doctored screenshots, crude memes of her face layered over witch hunt posters. The hashtag Marlowe lied trended globally within 2 hours of the article's release. The article itself was sleek. Polished. Published under the Silverlight partner outlet Stellar News. Exclusive. Troubled reporter seduced Silverlight star during mental health crisis. Complete with images from carefully curated leaks, including stills of her touching Adrian's hand in the backstage hallway, a blurred capture of her entering his villa, and a candid of Adrian, head and hands, framed as fragile. The implication was clear. She preyed on a collapsing man. The public responded accordingly. Vale for life. She's a leech. Always was. Hell's rough time. Someone docks her already. Throne fell heart. Burn the witch. Wolves before humans. We protect our alpha. Get her off the internet. Elena turned the phone off. Not out of self-preservation. Out of rage. Because the worst part wasn't the death threats. It was that people believed them. She didn't even hear about Lena until the hospital called. A number she didn't recognize. A nurse's voice on the other end. Quiet. Hesitant. Kind. "She's stable," the nurse said. "But she asked for you." The moment she entered the room, Elena saw the bruises. Lena's eyes were swollen but open, her hair matted, lips split. Elena sank into the chair beside the bed, hands shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Lena smiled, small, crooked. "You didn't hit me." "Someone did." "For someone's." "Why?" "They said I was your mouthpiece," Lena said, exhaling. "That I helped you lie. That if I wouldn't stop you, they'd stop me." Elena swallowed hard. "They're not fans anymore," Lena added, voice cracking. "They're wolves. Or worse, people who wish they were." Elena bowed her head. "You have to disappear," Lena said softly. "I already have." "No," Lena whispered. "I mean go deeper. Underground." Gone. Elena went to the only place no one would look. Her mother's book warehouse. The one off the old tram line, with no working lights and a half-collapsed ceiling. The one she used to hate as a child because it smelled like dust and grief and forgotten stories. She slipped in through the back, braced a chair against the door, and wrapped herself in the dark. Silence clung to her shoulders like an old coat. She found the journals stacked in a rotting box under a false bottom in the back shelving aisle. Pages brittle, ink faded. Most were unreadable. But one had a photograph tucked between the pages. Elena pulled it free. It showed her mother, young, proud, dressed in ceremonial gray, standing beside a tall figure cloaked in wolf-stitched black. His eyes were a pale, impossible gold. She stared. The face was unfamiliar. But the aura was not. She'd seen that posture. That command. That bloodline. He was one of the elders. The same ones who had judged her. And beside him, her mother. Smiling. Not afraid. Not pretending. Aligned. Beneath the photo, there was handwriting. Not her mother's. Different script. Rougher. Older. Written in the curling angular glyphs she now recognized as ancient wolf tongue. She flipped open the copy of the Moonbind primer she'd swiped from Adrian's desk weeks ago, scouring the translation key by flashlight. Slowly, the words came together. "By moon we bleed. By man we bind." She froze. Not prey. Not a stranger. Not even an outsider. Something else entirely. Her mother wasn't just close to the wolves. She had stood with them. And she had left Elena no warning. Only whispers. Only flames. Elena stared at the photo until the paper crinkled beneath her grip. Then she whispered to the room, to her mother's ghost, to whatever fate had watched this unfold. "If this is a story written in blood, then I'll bleed with my eyes open." Her phone buzzed from the corner. One last message had come through before the network cut. It was a screenshot. A forum thread. Fan run. Bloodthirsty. Elena's name in the title. The top comment read, "Her scent is everywhere. He'll never stop wanting her. So we remove the temptation." Beneath it, a location tag. The warehouse. Her breath stilled. Too late. She was already surrounded. Outside, boots scraped against gravel. A low knock on the boarded windows. She grabbed her bag and the photo, heart pounding. They weren't here to ask questions. They were here to finish the myth. But Elena had read enough stories to know how they really ended. The wolves didn't always win. Sometimes, the girl burned first. Chapter 19, Caged Hell. The walls of the Thorfell dungeon were not made to contain wolves. They were made to contain legends. The stone sweated cold. The air, stale and laced with ancient runes, clung like invisible chains to Adrian's skin. He lay slumped in the center of the chamber, knees tucked to his chest, sweat soaking through the thin linen of his shirt, breath fogging the air in shallow bursts. The silver was still in him. It curled through his veins like molten wire, threading pain into every nerve. Not enough to kill, never enough for that. Just enough to mute, to shackle. But it was failing. The first sign was the way his eyes began to fracture, not glow, but crack, like amber glass under pressure. The second was the claws, splintering through the nail beds of his fingers even though no moon rose overhead. And then the voices began. Not outside. Inside. "Elena," he whispered, throat torn raw from screaming her name hours ago. But now she answered. Except she wasn't there. Not really. "Adrian," the hallucination said, her voice like it was underwater, wrapped in fire. He looked up and saw her. Her hair was matted with blood. Her face was torn. Her eyes still bright, but burning. Her arms reached for him through smoke. Her mouth moved, forming silent pleas. Then, she was ripped backward into flame. "No," he screamed, scrambling forward on hands and knees, the chains biting into his ankles. "No, no, no, don't take her." The hallucination dissolved into ash. He clawed at it, the air, himself. "She's not dead," he rasped. "She's not dead, she's not dead, she's not." Behind the reinforced glass, Marcus watched. Arms folded. Face unreadable. "Do you see it now?" Marcus said softly, almost kindly. "What it means to choose a mate you were never meant to keep." Adrian's shoulders hunched. He bared his teeth like a cornered animal. "She's mine." "And yet," Marcus said, "your bond is unraveling. The more pain you feel, the more she feels. Your scent is leaking past the barriers. If she's still breathing out there, it's through blood in her mouth." Adrian shuddered. "I'll kill you." "You already did," Marcus replied. "When you let her love you." A low, guttural sound spilled from Adrian's throat. Not human. Not quite wolf. Something in between. He pressed his forehead to the floor, teeth gritted. His body trembled violently, muscles contracting, skin flushed and fevered. His breath rasped like it was trying to claw its way out of his lungs. "Elena," he whispered again, softer this time. The hallucination returned. This time she was on her knees, chains around her wrists. Her face was covered in soot. Her lips were moving, but no sound came. He tried to stand. The silver fought back. But instinct overrode poison. He rose. And something cracked. Inside him. Outside him. A sound like 1,000 mirrors shattering at once. His back arched. Claws split from both hands. His spine jolted as his shoulder blades twisted outward, not full shift, not yet, but enough to bend his body into the thread of one. His pupils blew wide. His scent, hidden for so long behind chemical control, flared through the chamber like wildfire, breaking past the rune walls. The air screamed. Marcus took one step back from the glass. Inside, Adrian staggered forward. The hallucination Elena stepped back. He roared. A sound that didn't belong to the moon. A sound that didn't ask for permission. A sound that broke the floor. The howl tore through the stones. The runes flickered. Chains groaned. Something snapped, metal against metal, and a link flung loose, ricocheting off the wall. Adrian felt his knees, panting, blood dripping from the sides of his mouth. Behind the glass, Marcus spoke softly, like a confession. "Do it then. Burn for her. Break for her. Be the monster she already chose." Adrian looked up. His eyes were gold, but leaking red. And in a voice that didn't sound like his own, he said, "If she dies, I won't stay in this shape." The lights flickered. Another chain split. Another hallucination appeared, this time, Elena's smile. Real. Gentle. Lit from within. But behind it, always the fire. He held again. The floor cracked. The ceiling trembled. And the very walls of the prison remembered something older than silver. Something even wolves feared. A mate mourning before death. Marcus turned away, walking down the corridor as the sound echoed behind him. The guards looked at him, uneasy. "Prepare a transfer protocol," he ordered. "To where?" Marcus didn't pause. To somewhere even the moon can't find him. The howl kept going. It didn't sound like pain anymore. It sounded like a promise. Chapter 20, Broadcasted Betrayal. The world tuned in to watch a star. Instead, they witnessed a fracture. Veldenridge Arena glittered under 1,000 lights, its vaulted ceiling turned into a digital sky, a full moon projected high above, silver and cold, as if mocking every secret buried beneath it. Spotlights swept the crowd of celebrities, diplomats, and influencers, all dressed to be remembered. On every major network, in over 100 countries, the broadcast of the global film honors was live. At the heart of it all stood Elias Thorfell. Tall, regal, impeccably tailored in a deep charcoal suit with frost-lined cuffs. His hair was dark and gleaming, his smile curated. There was something about him that felt manufactured in a way Adrian never had, his charisma too smooth, his poise too precise. The hosts flanked him like accessories. "And now," said the woman in a diamond-threaded gown, "please welcome the new Silverlight ambassador and star of the upcoming lunar fall, Mr. Elias Thorfell." Applause surged. Elias stepped to the center of the crystal stage. Behind him, the Silverlight logo hovered in midair like a moon-shaped crown. The music dimmed. The cameras zoomed. And then he spoke. In a world desperate for stability, he began, voice like velvet dipped in frost, "We cannot afford to romanticize instability." The room stilled. Silverlight has always stood for strength, clarity, evolution. And though we once believed in a face who embodied those values, it has become clear, painfully clear, that fame cannot disguise madness. A collective inhale passed through the crowd. Elias smiled. "Our former ambassador, Adrian Vale, who was never truly one of us, has succumbed to an affliction that endangers not only his legacy, but the veil that protects our kind. We regret to announce that his condition renders him unfit to lead. Silverlight will no longer be defined by a man too weak to hold himself together." The applause that followed was hesitant, confused, but obedient. And then, the air changed. There was a tremor. Faint. Wrong. Like the echo of something waking beneath the stage. The cameras wobbled. Someone in the front row gasped. And from the shadows at stage left, bleeding, staggering, shirt torn and eyes glowing gold, Adrian emerged. The crowd screamed. It was not the scream of delight. It was the sound of prophecy breaking. He walked like a man possessed, every step wet with blood, every breath shallow. His claws were half-shifted, embedded in shaking fingers. His hair hung damp over his brow, and his body shook as though every nerve rebelled against the air around him. Security froze. The camera feed stuttered. But the broadcast continued. Until he stopped center stage, face to face with Elias. A silence so sharp fell over the arena it could have split the earth. Adrian didn't look at Elias. He looked straight into the lens, into millions of living rooms, and said, "She didn't do this." No one breathed. "She didn't ask for it. She didn't ask for me." He was shaking harder now, his voice rough, cracking. "But I came for her. I let the mark sink. I let the hunger in. And you," he turned now, finally, toward Elias, voice rising, claws flexing, "you called her a temptation like she's the one who summoned the wolf." Adrian's lip curled, fangs just beginning to bare. "She's not the one who broke the veil. I did." 2 security guards lunged. Adrian didn't fight. He roared. The sound shattered the stage mic, cut out half the lighting grid, and sent the first 3 rows of chairs clattering backward. But he still stood. Then he fell, 5 guards now, silver rods pressed to his sides, dragging him to the floor, pinning him to the marble like a beast too proud to die quietly. The broadcast cut to black. Across the city, in a tiny apartment smelling of fear and coffee and dust, Elena stared at the frozen image on her screen. Adrian, covered in blood, screaming for her. She dropped the remote. Her hands were trembling so violently she couldn't pick it back up. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. It wasn't just that he'd said her name without saying it. It wasn't just the blood. It was the look. Like he knew she was watching. Like every word had been a prayer thrown through the camera. Her phone buzzed on the couch beside her. A new number. No name. Just a message. Next time, he won't stop at screaming. He'll tear you in half. And the world will say it was your fault. In the control tower beneath the arena, Marcus closed his laptop and folded his hands. Let them panic, he said. No one responded. He stood and walked to the wall of monitors, black screens now, every feed terminated. Only one camera remained active. It faced the underground cell where Adrian had already been dragged. He was on his knees, hands bound, head bowed, but his mouth moved. Again and again. The same word over and over. Elena. 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 Chapter 21. Burn What You Love. The hallway reeked of bleach and old reels. Elena walked in silence behind Marcus, the echo of their footsteps swallowed by the narrow corridor. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting shadows that didn't always match their movements. This place wasn't part of the public Silverlight archives. This was beneath, underneath, where the light didn't dare go. Where are we? She asked, voice raw from a night without sleep. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He let the silence hang until they stopped in front of a vault door. He turned to her, smiled faintly. Some memories are too inconvenient to keep in daylight, he said, pressing a keycard to the panel. The door unlatched with a mechanical hiss. They stepped into a circular chamber, lined floor to ceiling with shelves, film reels, data discs, labeled tapes, some handwritten, others marked with old Silverlight branding, the kind they stopped using over a decade ago. In the center, a low, shallow pit, blackened at the base, ringed with coils. An incinerator, Elena said under her breath. Marcus nodded. Silver fire. Fast. Clean. Leaves nothing behind. She turned to him sharply. You said you had something of my mother's. I do. He gestured toward a small table near the far wall. You'll find her name on the label. Elena crossed the room slowly, fingers trembling. She passed shelves labeled Vault Beta, private footage, experimental reel 34A. Near the table, a single reel sat in a glass case. She stepped closer. The tag read, Elena Marlowe, field interview, 1997, restricted. Her breath caught. Fingers hovered over the case. You're giving this to me? Marcus leaned against the incinerator control panel. It's yours. In exchange for the rest. She turned, confused. What rest? He pressed a button. With a mechanical growl, hidden doors slid open in the walls. Dozens of monitors flickered to life. And on each screen, her. Interviewing Adrian in shadowed studios. Speaking to him backstage. Laughing on rooftops with him, unaware they were being recorded. Private glances. Lingering touches. A stolen kiss in a dressing room that no one should have seen. You've been watching us, she said, voice hollow. Of course, Marcus said. You think the wolf was ever unsupervised? Elena took a step back. You want to erase him? No, he replied. I want to erase you from him. With another click, the base of the room began to glow. Thin streams of silver-blue flame lit beneath the pit. Heat swelled, subtle at first, then unbearable. She ran to the monitors. Stop it, don't. Marcus stood still, unmoving. You wanted proof of your love? He said softly. Here it is. Watch it burn. The first reel hissed as flame caught the edges. Video 7. Her fingers brushing Adrian's jaw. Video 12. His voice saying, You're not my weakness. You're the part of me that stayed human. Video 23. A shot of her sleeping in his arms, both of them unaware the room had eyes. No, she sobbed, lunging forward, trying to yank the reel from the flame. It was too late. The metal twisted. The plastic shrieked. She clawed through smoke, coughing, eyes wet with ash. Marcus remained silent. expression unreadable. "I won't forget him," she rasped, collapsing to her knees. "You can burn everything, but you can't touch what's in me." From behind her, a low, familiar voice echoed. Not in the room. Not in the air. In her chest. "Elena." She froze. "Don't forget me." Her breath hitched. They can burn the film. They can erase the screens. But they can't erase the blood. Her hands trembled. The mate bond. He was still inside her. Still speaking through the pain, the metal, the chains. Even if he didn't know how. "You are the real they can't reach." The flames roared higher. Marcus stepped forward now, slowly, almost kindly. "No one's trying to kill you, Elena," he said. "We're just killing the evidence you mattered." She stood, hair wild, face smeared with ash and salt and fury. "Then you've already lost," she said. "Because I do." She turned back to the table with her mother's case. But something else now caught her eye. A disc half buried beneath the ashfall. Scorched at the edges, but not gone. She reached for it. Pulled it free. The label was smudged, but still legible. Project Moondet. Her heart stopped. "What is this?" she asked, barely breathing. Marcus didn't answer. Not right away. He just stared. Then, for the first time, he looked unsure. "Something your mother shouldn't have seen," he said finally. Elena cradled the disc like it might vanish. "She did more than see it," she whispered. "She left it for me." The heat crackled behind them. Footage still melted in the flames. But this was untouched. And waiting. In a cage far beneath Silverlight Tower, Adrian stirred. Blood coated his lips. His body trembled. But his eyes opened. And for the first time in days, he smiled. Chapter 22, The Star with No Name. It began with silence. No press releases. No headlines. No official statement from Silverlight Studios. Just a slow, calculated unraveling. By the time Elena walked past the Veldenridge underground transit station that morning, Adrian Vale was already gone. His face had been scraped off the billboards, literally. One of the old campaign posters still clung stubbornly to a pillar beneath the eastbound platform. The frame was bent, the edges curling. It had once featured Adrian in a sleek charcoal suit, one hand raised mid-performance, eyes gold-lit in post-production glory. Now, a thick black X streaked across his face. Beneath it, someone had spray-painted in jagged red letters. "Kill your Wolf King." Elena stopped mid-step. The people around her didn't. They passed like waves. Phones glowing. Faces blink. A few glanced at the poster. Most didn't even notice. The world had already learned to look away. She stood there for what felt like hours, staring at that ruined image. At the smear where his face used to be. At the blood-red words. Her breath caught in her throat. Then she heard it, soft at first, like something cracked open in her chest. A sob. Her own. She didn't try to stop it. She slid down the cold metal railing, crouching behind a bench, clutching her coat tight as tears spilled without grace. Not grief. Not just that. Erasure. The world wasn't mourning him. It was editing him. When she finally returned to her apartment, her legs shaking from too many unspoken things, a box waited at her door. No return address. She carried it inside like it might explode. Inside, one item. A recorder. Old-fashioned. No digital trace. She clicked play with trembling fingers. His voice filled the room. Hoarse. Bruised. Intimate. Elena. Just that. Like a whisper he wasn't sure he was allowed to send. "They've taken everything. My name. My history. My image licenses. My voice files. My damn face. But they haven't taken you." She pressed her palm to the device, as if it could make him real again. "I don't know how long I have. I don't know what's left of me by the time you hear this. But you need to understand I chose this. Because if they erased you, Elena, I'd burn every screen until they remembered." Her throat closed. Then the next words came. "So don't shout my name in the dark anymore. It doesn't belong to me. They stole it. They branded it. Then they buried it. But you knew the man under the name. Keep that. Keep him. Static. A faint exhale. Then. And when the world tells you to forget, lie. The recording ended. The room was suddenly too quiet. Elena sat on the floor for a long time, the recorder still in her hand. She wanted to scream. She wanted to climb the Silverlight Tower and burn their archives to ash. She wanted to believe that memory was stronger than propaganda. But even she knew. Fame wasn't real. And what fame gave, it could take 10 times faster. That night, she searched his name. Not Adrian Vale. His real name. But the results were gone. Not just shadow banned. Erased. His movies? Removed from all major platforms. A note on Silverlight Plus read. This content has been temporarily removed due to licensing disputes. His fan accounts? Deleted. His interviews? Flagged unauthorized fabrications. Even the fandom wiki had been locked. She tried searching the archived pages. Most redirected. A few showed errors. Only one remained, a cached audio snippet uploaded years ago. She clicked it out of desperation. It was him. Younger. Warmer. Laughing. If I ever go missing, he joked, just look for the trail of broken cameras and hearts. Her chest splintered. The door buzzed. She didn't move at first. But the light on her delivery pad flashed red. Another package. She opened it slowly. Inside, one envelope. And one single black event ticket. No logo. No barcode. Just one phrase burned in red foil. The last wolf's roar. Underneath, in handwriting she didn't recognize. He's not gone. He's just been caged. Come see if he remembers how to howl. Her fingers tightened around the paper. It shook. Not from fear. But from something else. Faith, maybe. Or revenge. She stood slowly. Outside, the city blinked without him. But in her heart, his voice still lived. And she would follow it. To the very last roar. Chapter 23, The Underground Broadcast. There was no sign outside. No marquee. No guards. Just a scratched steel door tucked behind a closed-down ramen shop and a password whispered through rust. Elena gave the name she wasn't supposed to have. The man guarding the stairwell gave her a look that was more animal than human, but he let her through. The stairs led down. And down. And down. The sound hit her first. A low, pulsing vibration that thudded through the walls like a heartbeat fed through wires. Then the lights, dim, red, casting everything in the glow of blood behind eyelids. Veldenridge Underground was real. And tonight, it was sold out. Inside the arena, the walls were wrapped in mirrored black glass. Screens floated above the ring, showing replays of past bouts, bodies breaking under clawed fists, for sprouting in waves, limbs twisting with the crack of bone. This wasn't sport. This was spectacle. And it was profitable. Rows of elite subscribers, masked, jeweled, whispering into fluted glasses, lined the edges of the room. Each had paid to be here. Each had signed away discretion and morality. And above them all, in the booth of silver and smoke, Marcus. He stood with a mic in his hand and power in his smile. Welcome, he purred, voice like dark velvet, to the final showing of our exclusive feature, The Last Wolf's Roar. Applause. Laughter. Champagne popping. Elena stood at the edge of the crowd, hood drawn, breath shallow. She was shaking. Not from fear. From knowing. Because she didn't have to ask who the next fighter would be. She could already feel him. The stage dimmed. The crowd went quiet. And then, from the far gate, dragging chains behind his bare, blood-streaked feet. Adrian. But not as the world had known him. No suit. No smile. No mask. This was a creature built of shadows and shredded restraint. His hair was wild, his chest bare and bruised. Silver burn marks curled around his ribs like vines. His hands, once the most photographed in the world, were no longer human. talons flexed beneath cracked nails. He didn't look up. Didn't see the crowd. Didn't see her. Only the ring. Only the other wolf. The match began with a roar. The kind that peeled flesh from bone in sound alone. Elena watched from behind a veil of heat and horror as Adrian launched into the other fighter, an alpha bred for blood, taller and younger and already half-shifted. But Adrian moved like fire. Like vengeance. Like he didn't care if he left the ring alive as long as he took something with him. They didn't fight. They tore. Flesh. Muscle. Control. Elena couldn't breathe. This wasn't him. This wasn't her Adrian. But he didn't stop. Not when the other wolf's ribs cracked. Not when the crowd screamed. Not even when the other body fell to the floor with a sound like a tree finally breaking in the wind. Adrian stood above the blood-soaked wreckage, panting, trembling, eyes glowing the color of molten gold. And he howled. It wasn't victory. It wasn't even rage. It was mourning. The lights flared. Marcus stepped forward into the ring, lifting his arms like a conductor summoning the final note. Behold, he called, your wild god. Broken. Beaten. Beautiful. Applause thundered like war drums. Adrian didn't flinch. He just stared at the floor. Elena moved. She slipped past the velvet ropes, ducked the guards, and ran, through the side gate and down the back hall where she knew the fighters were dragged when the show ended. Her badge, stolen and forged, barely scanned. But it opened the door. And what she saw inside made her knees nearly give. Adrian sat on the floor, chained again. His body shook with the aftershock of violence. His head hung low, sweat and blood dripping from his brow. His shoulders were raw from where silver restraints had been yanked off. He didn't move when she approached. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. Elena, she whispered, kneeling. Nothing. She crawled closer, ignoring the puddle of blood, the shudder in her spine, the guards surely watching from behind mirrored glass. She reached out, touched his face. Still nothing. Then, he blinked. Just once. And his clawed hand lifted. Slow. Shaking. She didn't pull away. He didn't touch her skin. He touched her shirt. Drew one letter. Then another. 4 in total. D. O. N. T. And then he scratched one more line, across them all. A shaky cross. Don't fear me. Her eyes filled with tears. He was still in there. Somewhere beneath the silver. The rage. The stolen name. Adrian, she breathed. His body jerked. Not violently, but like her voice cut through some fog. His head tilted, but his mouth didn't move. So she leaned close, forehead against his. You're still you, she said. Even if they can't see it. No reply. Just breath. She cupped his face. I will get you out of here. Even if I have to burn the whole stage down. The chain at his ankle clicked as he shifted, ever so slightly, toward her warmth. Elena kissed his brow. And for a second, he leaned into it. Then, the alarms blared. She froze. The red light washed the room. Security breach. The guards were coming. Don't move, she whispered, brushing his jaw. He didn't. Just kept breathing. Still trembling. Still silent. Still his. As the doors burst open and they dragged her away, she screamed one thing over her shoulder. Not his name. Not a promise. Just, if you don't come back, I'll go mad with you. The doors slammed shut between them. But neither of them had stopped listening. Chapter 24, Mark Me or Let Me Go. The old cinema had died long before anyone realized it was a temple. Its screen was torn, chairs rotted to the frame, and the ceiling wept mildew from cracks. But deep beneath the projection room, behind a wall that once showed fantasy and now guarded truth, Elena found it. The wolf altar. A stone dais carved into the shape of a crescent moon, its center stained with something older than blood, older than memory. The moonlight filtered through a ruined skylight overhead, weak, veiled in clouds, but enough to cast everything in a silver wash. Adrian stood at the far edge of the ruin, shoulders hunched, breath shallow. He'd followed her. Not with words. Not with understanding. But with instinct. He was still not whole. Still frayed from the trials. His shirt hung in tatters, his skin marked with scars that hadn't had time to fade. His claws flexed and twitched. His eyes flickered between gold and something darker. But he hadn't turned back. Not when she asked him to come. Not when she walked ahead, knowing he could have torn her apart with one misplaced step. She stepped into the center of the stone, the cold pressing through her boots, into her bones. Her fingers reached for her collar. She pulled it open and bared her throat. "Do it," she said. Her voice didn't shake. Adrian didn't move. Her voice rose. "This is what they've been trying to stop, isn't it? The bond. The mark. You and me. Nothing. You think by walking away you're protecting me," she said. "But all you've done is leave me half alive." He growled low, animal wounded. "Then finish it," she whispered, stepping forward. "Either kill me or mark me. But I'm not leaving this altar until one of us stops pretending we can survive this." He looked at her. And it wasn't the look of a man about to strike. It was the look of a god on his knees, bleeding from the mouth. She stepped closer. "I know I'm not strong enough to live without you." He flinched. "Are you?" Adrian moved then. Suddenly. Violently. He crossed the distance between them in a single, blur-fast step and slammed his hands against the altar on either side of her, caging her body in. His breath hit her like heat, like hunger. His mouth hovered over her neck, just above the place where it would mean forever. His claws dug into the stone. "Don't test me," he said, voice shredded. "I'm not in control." "Then stop trying," she said. "You told me once that your love would destroy me." His head dropped, teeth bared just above her pulse. She tilted her head back farther, exposed herself more fully. "So destroy me," he roared. The sound cracked something in the roof above them. Dust rained down. The moonlight flickered. And then he kissed her neck. Slow. Shaking. His lips grazed the skin that would have broken so easily beneath his teeth. But he didn't bite. He pressed his mouth to the curve of her throat like a prayer, reverent, aching, a war fought in silence. "I can't," he whispered. Tears burned down her cheeks. "Why not?" "Because you're not mine," he said. "You were never meant to be mine." Don't," she begged. He looked at her like a man watching his lifeline snap thread by thread. "You're the last dream I had before they turned me into this." She reached for him then, cupping his face, dragging his forehead to hers. "I'm not a dream," she said. "I'm here. Right now. Right here." "I know," he choked out. "And that's why I won't curse you." She kissed him. Desperate. Wounded. It tasted like finality. His hands shook as they wrapped around her waist, pulling her close, holding her like she was already fading. "I wanted to mark you the first time I saw you," he confessed against her lips. "And every second since." "Then do it." His claws retracted, his whole body shuddering with restraint. "I want to tear into your skin so the world knows you're mine. So the bond can never be denied. So no man can touch you without feeling me there." She cried against his jaw. "Then why not?" He pulled back. Just enough to meet her eyes. "Because if I do," he said, voice breaking, "there's no more line between what I am and what I'll do to keep you." Silence. His breath was fire. His eyes gold and red and lost. She opened her mouth to respond. And the stone beneath them cracked. A fracture split the altar in two, running beneath her feet like a vein bursting open. Adrian caught her as she stumbled. Held her tight. Even as the temple groaned, the moonlight collapsed and the ritual space began to fall into itself. He pressed his lips to her ear and whispered, barely audible through the rising wind. "We're already too far gone." His grip on her never loosened. Even as the altar crumbled. Even as her tears soaked his color. Even as their bond, unmarked, unfinished, tied them tighter than fate ever intended. And when the last stone fell, his voice, raw, broken, holy, echoed against the ruins. We can't let each other go. Chapter 25. The broadcast of her execution. The world came dressed in judgment. It tuned in through satellite links, livestream portals, wall-to-wall news screens. Millions of viewers watching from every continent, every capital. Celebrities, diplomats, civilians. Some with popcorn. Some with clenched fists. All waiting for the same thing. A confession. A spectacle. A cleansing. The Silverlight Tower had been redesigned for this moment. The main auditorium, once a theater for premieres, now functioned like a high court cathedral, spotless white walls, a crescent stage ringed with gold, and a single podium at the center like an altar awaiting sacrifice. At the top of the hour, Marcus entered. Perfect. Immaculate. Wrapped in black on black silk and silver clasps shaped like wolf's teeth. The crowd applauded. The cameras clicked. The live stream viewership counter hit 28 million and climbing. He raised a hand. Thank you all for joining us on this historic day, he began, voice warm and polished, the sound engineered to settle into the subconscious like a lullaby. Today, he said, we reveal the truth behind the events that have shaken not only the entertainment world, but the very boundaries of species integrity and social order. Images flashed on the screen behind him, clips of Adrian howling, his claws dripping in underground rings, his golden eyes wide and wild. Elena beside him, her hand on his shoulder. His mouth close to her neck. The footage was real. The context was a lie. We have gathered overwhelming evidence, Marcus continued, that a human woman, Elena Marlowe, has used pheromonal manipulation and intimate proximity to deliberately destabilize a high-ranking alpha-class wolf, endangering both species. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Behind Marcus, the side doors opened, and Elena was led in. 2 guards flanked her. Her wrists were bound in glassine cuffs, her hair pulled back, a split across her lip still bleeding. She wore no makeup, no armor, just the plain gray uniform of the accused. The light hit her like a bullet. The audience leaned forward. She was placed in front of the podium. Marcus turned to her. You may address the world. She didn't look at him. She looked at the cameras. At the millions of eyes behind the glass. I won't confess to a lie, she said. Her voice was low but unshaking. You seduced him, Marcus said smoothly, stepping beside her, feeding the narrative like a performance. You corrupted a being whose biology was not compatible with yours. I loved him, she said. You used him. I stayed when everyone else turned away. You injected yourself into his mind. I was in his mind because we are bonded. The crowd rustled. Marcus smiled slightly. And what exactly do you expect the world to do with that claim? Believe it, she said. He stepped back. Elena Marlowe, he said loudly to the cameras now. In light of your refusal to cooperate with a peaceful resolution, Silverlight and the Interspecies Peace Accord hereby revoke your human protections. You are to be classified as an unregulated hybrid contaminant. Gasps. Murmurs. One of the hosts of Daylight News covered her mouth. A death sentence in everything but name. And yet, Marcus said, with mock grace, we offer you one last opportunity to correct the record. Recant. Admit your manipulation. Apologize. The world may grant you mercy. Elena stood still. Then, slowly, calmly, she raised her bound hands to her mouth. And bit. Her own wrist. Hard. The skin broke. Blood welled. And then scent. It hit the stage like smoke. Like storm. A burst of chemical wildfire. A signature no human should have had. A bond gone wrong trace only the wolves could recognize. Pheromonal collapse. The scent of someone bound to an alpha who hadn't marked her, and yet had already carved too deep. The guard staggered. Marcus went pale. The screens flickered. Elena looked out into the audience. Into the cameras. And whispered. I'm not his predator. I'm his mate. The crowd went silent. I didn't make him lose control. He chose to fight it every time he touched me. He never marked me, never claimed me, because he was afraid of becoming the thing you turned him into. She swallowed. And now you're asking me to admit guilt for a love you couldn't understand? A tear slid down her cheek. No, I won't rewrite the truth to save my life. I'd rather die a wolf's mate than live as your puppet. She dropped to her knees on the stage, wrists still bleeding. Face pale. Eyes locked on the main camera feed. And softly, brokenly, she said, "Can you hear me, Adrian?" Silence. Then, a howl. Not from the broadcast. Not from any speaker. From the sky. A raw, ripping, moonless howl that rolled across the city like thunder from a throat not meant to be sane anymore. Somewhere, he had heard. Somewhere, he had answered. The crowd erupted. Some ran. Some screamed. Some clapped. The screens crackled with interference. And Marcus, for the first time, flinched. Chapter 26. He tore the moon apart. The moon was missing. That was the first omen. Above Veldenridge, the clouds lay thick as steel, no silver glow breaking through. The sky pulsed with a strange static charge, the kind that made your bones itch and your thoughts go quiet. And in the heart of the city, at the top of the Silverlight Tower, the world was watching a woman bleed. And something was coming for her. Inside the Silverlight confinement wing, sirens had long given up trying to sound. They'd been shredded, like everything else. The security gates, the injection chambers, the silver-laced manacles designed to dull even the most feral alpha's instincts, melted, snapped, twisted like vines after a storm. Adrian stood at the center of the wreckage. Or something that had once been Adrian. His body glistened with sweat and blood, bones fracturing and reforming beneath the skin. Claws split from human hands. His spine hunched. Muscle tore fabric. His mouth, longer now, fanged, dripped with heat and hunger. And yet his eyes stayed gold. Not wild. Focused. On one thing. Her. He broke through the final door without touching it. The force of his howl shattered it from the inside. On the rooftop, Marcus was already raising the mic again. Elena Marlowe has made her choice, he announced to the world. She has refused redemption. Refused to denounce the infection she carries. She would rather burn than bend. The crowd, both in person and online, was rapt. And so, Marcus said, voice sharp and cold, we give her the ending she has asked for. He raised his hand. Security tightened. A silver gun gleamed on his belt. Elena stayed on her knees at the stage's center, blood dripping from her wrist. Her lips parted, a single word trembling there. Adrian. And then, the wind changed. Power blew out across the city in a burst of white. Every light on the Silverlight Tower died. Every monitor snapped to black. A second later, the building shuddered. Windows cracked from the inside. Cameras sparked and burst. Metal warped, groaning like it was being screamed into submission. From the eastern stairwell, explosion. And then, he appeared. Blood slicked. Wolf formed. Half man, half beast, too large, too fast, too unholy to be real. His fur was silver streaked with red, his claws dragging sparks from the tile. His chest heaved with something deeper than breath. The moment he stepped into view, the air dropped 10 degrees. Adrian didn't roar. He didn't need to. The silence was enough. Every soul on the rooftop felt him. A god unseated. A name unwritten. He crossed the platform in 4 strides, leaving ruin in his wake, microphones sparking, flags torn from their posts, the moonless sky parting for him as if terrified of what it had failed to call. And then, he dropped. At her feet. This creature, this myth, this world's most wanted weapon, lowered his entire form until his bloodied paws touched her shoes, his head bowed to the ground. His chest trembled. His ears twitched. Tears welled in his golden eyes. He looked up at her, not as a beast, but as a man inside one. And in that stare, sorrow. Sacrifice. A prayer. He nudged her with his muzzle, gently. Don't be afraid. Elena fell to her knees. Not in surrender. In reverence. She wrapped her arms around his monstrous skull and held him to her chest, whispering into his fur, "They didn't take you. They never could. I still hear you." His body trembled. One paw lifted, just one, and slowly, shakily, scratched a single line across the broken stage between them. "Mine," she cried into his mane. "If you're going to burn," she whispered, "then take me with you." Somewhere behind them, metal cocked. Marcus stepped forward from the shadowed edge of the platform, his silhouette sharp under emergency floodlights. He held the silver gun steady, pointed directly at the pair. His voice was calm. Too calm. "This is the moment the world rewrites itself," he said. "No more uncertain bloodlines. No more messy loyalties." He lifted the gun higher. "You were never the Alpha, Adrian," he whispered. "You were just the mask we let them worship." Adrian rose slowly. Still in wolf form. Still pressed against Elena's body. But his body vibrated now with something new. Rage wrapped in devotion. Elena didn't move. Didn't flinch. She simply pulled his muzzle to her shoulder, cradled him like a torch she was ready to carry. Marcus's finger curled on the trigger. "And with this shot," he said, "the world will finally see who the real Alpha is." The clouds above broke. And the howl that answered wasn't from Adrian. It was from every wolf in the city. Echoing back. Calling their king. Chapter 27, We Burn Before They Break Us. The world was ending in ash and starlight. Adrian's body was still bleeding. His skin hadn't fully returned to human. He moved with a limping gait, claws half retracted, the fur on his forearms disappearing and reappearing in flickers, like static beneath his flesh. Each breath sounded like it was stolen from a war that had already claimed too much. Elena kept her arm around him anyway. They stumbled through the remains of the Veldenridge cinema, now reduced to rubble and time-stained marble. The walls no longer whispered dialogue. The screen was just torn cloth hanging like a surrender flag. But below, through a hatch tucked behind the ruined concession counter, there was a way out. Adrian found it blind. Or maybe not blind, guided. The tunnel smelled like iron and moss and memory. "Where does it go?" Elena asked, her voice raw from smoke and heartbreak. He didn't look at her when he answered. "Where the first wolves went. When the last one before me tried to love someone he wasn't supposed to." She almost laughed. "And how did that end?" Adrian's jaw clenched. "There's no record." They descended in silence. The path narrowed, dirt giving way to stone, to gravel, to metal rails like a forgotten underground vein. Wolf runes flickered along the walls, old protection symbols worn smooth. They walked until Elena couldn't feel the world above them anymore, only him. Only the sound of two people who'd lost everything but each other. He paused. They stood beneath what once had been Silverlight's foundation. A hollowed-out monument tunnel. A wall ahead bore a plaque, cracked down the middle, engraved with the company's corporate motto. "To shine is to obey." Elena stared at it. Then at him. Then back again. He looked at her finally. "We can go. Far enough they'll never find us. Cross the range. Disappear." Her voice cracked. "You really think we can live like that? Hunted. Hiding. No names. No future." He touched her face with fingers still too sharp. "I never had a future. You gave me one when you said you weren't afraid. That was before they turned you into something the world wants dead." "I was something the world wanted dead," he said. "You just made it matter." Her chest tightened. She stepped away, suddenly overwhelmed. Her palms dug into her temples. "You'd throw away the moon, your name, your pack for me?" "No," he moved behind her. "I'd throw away the lie that I ever needed those more than I needed you." Elena shook her head, tears slipping free. "You're insane." "I know. And I'm no one," she whispered. "No claws. No hull. Just a girl who got too close to something ancient and paid for it." Adrian turned her around. Pressed his forehead to hers. "You didn't pay," he said, voice breaking. You bit into me. You tore through everything I thought I was and stayed. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Because beneath the anger, beneath the smoke and claw marks, there was only one truth left between them. They weren't alive anymore. They were burning. From the far end of the tunnel, footsteps echoed. Elena froze. Adrian stepped in front of her. Then, "Relax," said a familiar voice. Lena, covered in soot, limping, but alive. She held something out to Elena, a charred envelope, edges singed, scent still faintly of lavender and old ash. "Your mother's diary," Lena said. "I couldn't save all of it." Elena took it in shaking hands. Only one page had survived. At the bottom, her mother's handwriting. "The moon debt is not paid in blood. It is paid in sting." She stared at it. Read it again. And again. And again. Then she folded the page and pressed it to her chest. Adrian was watching her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. "I don't want to run anymore," she whispered. He stepped closer. Wrapped his arms around her waist, claws careful, body shaking from the effort not to shift again. "Then we don't run," he said. "We don't beg. We don't ask." He bent his head to her shoulder. Voice ragged. "We burn." Elena closed her eyes. Together. He kissed her skin, not as a claim, not as control, but as anchor. Always. Later, when the city's alarms faded and the smoke cleared from the last rooftop, someone found a single backpack left at the mouth of the escape tunnel. Inside it, food, documents, fake IDs. And a note scrawled in blood and ink. "We're not escaping anymore. We're not hiding. If we go down, we make them build a new moon from the fire." Chapter 28, The Last Roar They Can't Silence. The wind was too loud at this height. The top of the Silverlight Tower sliced into the storm-heavy sky like a blade of obsidian. Clouds churned. Thunder growled. Helicopter lights blinked in the distance, not daring to get closer. And from the rooftop, a voice cut through it all. Unamplified. Unfiltered. Real. "This is not a performance," Elena said into the blinking red eye of the hijacked camera feed. "This is the truth you were never supposed to hear." Her hair whipped around her face, tangled with ash and blood. The wound in her shoulder, fresh from a graze of Marcus's bullet, bled through the fabric of her jacket, but she stood tall, unwavering. Beside her, Adrian paced like a storm barely leashed. His body was half-shifted, muscle too large for skin, jaw too elongated, hands already clawed. He hadn't spoken yet, but the world could feel him. Because every network had gone dark except this one. Every television, phone screen, subway panel, stadium jumbotron now showed only the rooftop. Only them. Elena raised her voice. "My name is Elena Marlowe. I am human. And I am the mate of a werewolf." There was no turning back. She took a breath, eyes sharp and wet with defiance. "They told me to be afraid of him. That he was unstable. Inhuman. That he needed to be silenced. Cured." She looked to Adrian now. He stepped forward. Fully. Into frame. And shifted. No holding back. No hiding. In a breath, his form collapsed inward and then burst outward, limbs elongating, for splitting from flesh, eyes flaring to molten gold. The cameras trembled. The world gasped. The truth stood on two massive hind legs, panting, chest heaving, claws dripping from battles no one had seen. But the wolf did not attack. He knelt, on both front limbs, and bowed his monstrous head at her feet. A god surrendering to love. Then came the thunder that wasn't weather. A blast door crashed open at the other end of the rooftop. Floodlights erupted. Armed enforcers poured out in tactical black, weapons drawn. Between them, flanked by Silverlight's last loyalists, stood Marcus. And Elias. Pristine. Polished. Unbrozed by truth. Marcus stepped forward with the calm of a priest at a funeral. "Cut the feed," he ordered. "Too late," Elena called. "They've already seen him. They've already seen us. You think that matters?" Marcus's voice was razor-cool. A spectacle doesn't change the system. The moment he bonded with you, he was already sentenced. Behind him, a technician confirmed, signal jam initiated. On every device across the world, the screen began to flicker. Falter. Fracture. Elena's heart pounded. Adrian. Before she could say more, Marcus raised his hand. The weapon in his grasp wasn't a gun this time. It was worse. A small black detonator, wolf-forged, carved with old sigils. Elena went pale. What is that? Marcus smiled. The extinction mark, he said. Wolves were never supposed to bond to humans. If one did, the mate line could be severed, along with the source of its strength. You can live, Vale. But not with her. He pressed the trigger. Elena screamed. And Adrian howled. The sound was pure agony. His body convulsed, his bones breaking, unbreaking, for falling out in clumps. He staggered back, claws digging into concrete, his mouth opening in a silent cry as the mate bond ruptured inside him. Elena ran. Reached him just as he collapsed. She caught him, barely, his massive form folding into her, blood running from his nostrils, his pulse flickering beneath his ruined ribcage. No, 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 she whispered. Stay with me. Stay. Behind them, Marcus advanced. You've both had your time, he said. Now the world resets. He lifted his gun, aimed it at her head, and pulled the trigger. The bullet hit flesh, but not hers. Adrian moved faster than the final frame of a nightmare. He took the shot, square in the chest. Then, roaring with everything left in him, he rose. Bleeding, dying, transforming. Not back into man, not into beast, but into something beyond. His claws dragged into the rooftop, slicing the old wolf script into glowing lines. His blood filled them. And as Marcus stepped back in horror, Adrian screamed into the storm. You can kill the wolf. The sky trembled. But you cannot kill what he loves. The sigils flared. Silver burned to ash. Every camera sparked one last time. And the feed, restored for just one flickering heartbeat, showed the world its final image. A woman on her knees. A wolf collapsed into her arms. And behind them a light, not from the moon, but from the bond between them, shining like something too sacred for screens. Elena pressed her forehead to his fur. Tears fell like rain. You were never a monster, she whispered. But if you are, then I will love you, monster and all. The final shot rang out. The screen went black. But across every city, every hill, every place, wolves still remembered what it meant to howl for the ones they lost. The night split with a cry. One not of death, but of defiance. The last roar. The one they couldn't silence. Chapter 29. The Debt That Took My Name. The world faded in flickers. Elena wasn't sure where her body ended anymore. Every breath came shallow, every sound a muffled echo behind her ribs. She floated between seconds, memories bleeding together like spilled ink, too thick, too fast. She wasn't dead. But death had curled up beside her and begun to whisper. The first vision came like breath on glass. A boy, no older than 6. Hiding behind a torn movie curtain, his knees scraped, his hands trembling. A voice echoed off the film-stained walls. You don't howl inside the studio, Adrian. Remember the rules. If you howl here, they'll find you. He bit his lip, swallowed the sound. She saw herself then, impossibly, kneeling beside him, her adult frame superimposed onto this past. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. His tiny, golden eyes looked up, blinked once, and saw her. You smell like, he whispered, confused. The place I'm not allowed to go. The second vision bled in. Her mother's voice. Love isn't safe. It's louder than any rule. Elena turned. Her mother stood in a field of pale grass, one hand on a silver stone etched with moon script. Her face was younger than Elena had ever seen, hair wild, eyes clear. You'll think you chose him, she said gently, but really, You just never turned away. Behind her, the moon cracked open. A howl tore through the grass like fire. The final vision struck like lightning. The night Adrian changed for the first time. She stood beside the version of herself that had watched it happen, watched his body break and remake, watched him kneel in the dirt, refusing to hurt her even when his fangs were centimeters from her throat. But now she saw what she hadn't before. That his eyes hadn't just begged her to leave. They'd begged her to remember. She came back to the world with a gasp. Pain sharpened every nerve. Her chest felt caved in. Her throat burned with blood she hadn't finished coughing up. But she was alive. And Adrian was holding her. They were in an old medical wing, abandoned, repurposed into a courtroom for wolves who broke too far from the leash. Moonlight streamed through a cracked skylight, casting him in a halo of silvered defiance. His body was still damp with the blood he'd bled to get here, his shoulder torn where Marcus's bullet had grazed him on the rooftop. In the far corner of the room, Marcus lay on the ground. Broken. Breathing. But barely. "You won," he rasped, a smear of blood on his lips. "But you'll never be them. Not again." Adrian didn't look at him. His eyes were only for her. The elders circled. Shadows with teeth. One stepped forward. "Adrian Thorfell. You invoke blood reversal." Adrian nodded. "I request full severance of the silver curse. I will relinquish royal claim. Name. Lineage. You forfeit the Thorfell, right?" "I forfeit everything," he said. The elder's gaze flicked to Elena. "Human mate. Do you consent?" Elena coughed, blood slick on her tongue, and whispered, "Only if he remembers me." The elder raised a brow. "Name yourself." Her voice cracked again. "Elena Marlowe." "Not the name given to you by papers," the elder snapped. "The name given by bond." Adrian didn't hesitate. He turned to her. Knelt. And in a voice thick with salt and soul, he said, "You are the debt my soul owed the stars." A silence fell. It wasn't ceremonial. It was holy. The elder touched a blade to both their palms. Blood met in the space between them. A single drop hissed against the floor, and the silver glyphs burned red. The bond, what had been poisoned, broken, burned, reknit. Not a mate mark. Something older. Something owed. Hours passed. The hearing dispersed. Marcus was taken, not with celebration, but with silence, the kind that ends dynasties. Adrian helped Elena into a clean cot, his arms trembling from exhaustion. Her body was stitched, dosed, but she felt whole in a way she hadn't since this began. She looked up at him, voice soft. "Do you remember who I am?" He leaned in, pressed his forehead to hers. "You're the howl that ruined my cage." Miles away, in a newsroom buried beneath shell corporations and cold coffee, a file uploaded. It had no title. Just a thumbnail of a woman cradling a beast, her hand on his face, her blood on his fur. A junior tech clicked it open. His screen went black. Then, a howl. Not myth. Proof. He blinked. And the file began to stream. Every server. Every country. Every open eye. The secret was no longer secret. And the world was listening. Chapter 30, The Silence After the Moon. There was no sign on the road that told you when you left the world behind. No border, no checkpoint, no toll booth. Just a stretch of cracked asphalt that turned to gravel, then dirt, and finally to silence. That kind of silence only places untouched by satellites still remember. The town didn't have a name. Or rather, it had too many names, none of them official. Locals called it Ghost Line. Or Crater's Edge. Or simply Out. Whatever it was called, it was far from Veldenridge. Far from flashing lights, clickbait headlines, silver bullets in the dark. And that was the point. Elena stood at the edge of the old cinema ruins, hammer in hand, sweat on her brow. The sun was just starting to set, painting the sky in shades of apricot and bruised lavender. The building hadn't been salvaged so much as reclaimed. Its skeleton had survived, barely. The projection room was gone. So was half the roof. But the bones were still here, a wall that remembered how to hold light, a floor that still creaked in familiar ways, and one steel door that had refused to rust shut. Adrian had repaired it all with his hands. Elena had helped with hers. No crew. No blueprints. Just breath and effort and stubbornness carved from shared scars. They called it the Shadow Room. Not a theater. Not a church. Just a place where memory could play, if you were brave enough to sit still for it. Inside, the first reel played on a salvage screen. No sound. Just light and grain and fragments. Elena in profile, smiling in a way she never had on camera. Adrian's shadow moving behind her. Their hands touching off frame. He had refused to be filmed at first. For months, she respected that. But one day, as she adjusted the tripod in their small rebuilt home behind the theater, he looked at her and said, "If I vanish again, promise me they'll know I was here." She did more than promise. She recorded. Not for the world. Just for the record. A new upload blinked live to the anonymous account that had surfaced weeks ago, Silent Moon Reel. No followers. No tags. No monetization. Just untraceable clips. Each titled with a phase of the moon. Tonight's last quarter. Elena sat in the dark behind the camera. Her voice, tired but unwavering, broke the silence. You destroyed a man for loving in a way you didn't understand. You shattered his name, his face, his future. A pause. Then. But you didn't destroy his moon. She clicked off the recording. Outside, Adrian sat on the cinema steps, the hood of his jacket pulled low over his forehead, the tip of his cigarette glowing like a fading star. He didn't smoke it. Just held it between his fingers. Old habits die softer than most people think. Elena walked over and sank beside him, her legs aching from the day's work. You finished the edit? He asked. She nodded. Uploaded? Yeah. He gave her a sideways glance. Anything new this time? She smirked. A grand total of 19 views. His grin was small but real. That's 17 more than yesterday. Lena called later that night. She was in rehab now. Her voice was scratchy, her spirit unbroken. She told them she was starting a foundation for whistleblowers who had once loved someone too inconvenient for the headlines. You should name it after yourself, Elena said. Too dangerous, Lena laughed. But maybe I'll name it after your wolf. Adrian raised a brow from the couch. Please don't. Lena's voice turned soft. You two okay? We're not okay, Elena said truthfully. But we're alive. Together. That counts. They had no formal papers. No titles. No real names. But they had each other. Adrian, once the face of a billion-dollar industry, now spent his days chopping wood, building chairs with claw-resistant polish, and pressing his lips into Elena's shoulder at night when sleep tried to drag her back into old dreams. Elena wrote. Edited. Recorded. She had a hard drive full of things no one had dared publish. Stories of how love survived censorship. How truth bent but didn't break. How monsters were often just men waiting for someone to call them home. One night, while Elena was sweeping dust from the projection booth, a child wandered in. A local. No more than 7, camera in hand, eyes too big for his tiny body. He pointed to one of the old reels stacked near the wall. Who's Vale? He asked, voice curious. Elena looked up. The footage behind her stilled. A frozen frame of Adrian, half lit, half shadowed, his eyes aglow. She walked over, knelt beside the boy, and smiled gently. Vale, she said, is just a story. But people say he was real. Her smile softened. Some stories are too real to stay on screens, she whispered. The boy tilted his head. But what was his real name? Elena looked toward the back door, where Adrian was chopping firewood under the pale arc of a moon that still hadn't forgotten them. She touched the boy's camera, guiding it down gently. You won't find it in a search bar, she said. And you won't see it on any screen. She stood. Because the people who remember his real name don't need a camera to find him. The screen fades to black. But somewhere, Deep in the database void, a thumbnail flickers. Two silhouettes curled against a glowing screen. A wolf's breath fogging the lens. A woman's voice saying, "Roll the next one."